Good morning.
Morning.
Good morning. Good morning.
That was a challenge.
I know.
Why did you sound like a frog just now?
I'm getting my voice back.
Oh my gosh, what happened?
Just lost it over
has
the
a cold.
weekend. You know.
She's spewing her droplets in my direction. Stand by, we're going live.
Too much partying.
Yeah. Oh, going to bed at 9 o'clock as a parent. Yeah, party. It's 106.1 Kiss FM, Cayman's best variety. It's the Blake and Aaron show on a Tuesday. I love the short work week.
Oh,
Super
yes.
nice.
It does keep feeling like Monday though.
Tomorrow's Wednesday already. What do you mean?
I know.
That's awesome.
That's pretty cool.
7:21 right now. Let's catch you up on everything that happened over the long weekend.
Big news. I have some important news for you. Interesting news.
It's Blake and Aaron's Spilling the Tea with Sandy.
Cayman's top news headlines of the day from CMR.
Good morning, Sandy.
Good morning, Blake and Aaron. How are you guys doing?
Good. How was the weekend?
Wonderful.
Yeah, it was great. Fantastic.
All
Bracknell seems to have gone off without a hitch.
Good.
Yes.
Cool.
Discovery Day obviously was yesterday. So a lot of people took the opportunity to travel over the weekend. I can tell you that flights were full in and out of the Cayman Islands.
Oh, really?
And,
Yeah, the airport parking lot looked rammed.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
And in addition to that, of course, because of the delays with the Jamaica situation the day before, there were additional flights put on for Jamaica as well. So Cayman Airways was incredibly busy. There's a little bit of an issue with the charter flight that went to the BRAC for Bracknell. Some mechanical issue kind of slowed things down there, but they quickly got things back on schedule. And in regional news, with a connection to the Cayman Islands, a 19-year-old Caymanian was arrested in Honduras in a taxi cab murder. Absolutely horrible situation. But this young man who has ties between Cayman and Honduras was essentially involved. Jaden Woodman Webster was arrested along with two others, a Jamaican national who's 25 years old and a Honduran man who is 41 years old. They all reside back and forth, I guess, in La Ceiba. And all three were arrested for supposedly or reportedly carrying out a robbery of a taxi driver where the taxi driver was actually killed. So big news over the weekend. Everyone was shocked and surprised by this. So we'll keep an eye and see what happens there. But at 19 could be heading to real jail in Honduras.
Jeez.
Yeah, it's pretty
It's
crazy.
pointless.
Yeah. And things in Jamaica continue to be volatile for some industries there as multiple strikes are happening. Workers are calling for salary increases. So the prime minister has called on the public sector not to create any crises for themselves and to allow industrial negotiations to work out. But not really working out too well, because on Friday, workers at the National Housing Trust walked off the job. And this, of course, is following, like I said, the day before, the air traffic controllers actually going on strike as well. So we'll see. The Jamaica Civil Service Association, which represents, they're the union that represents thousands of government employees, also gave notice of further demonstrations this week. So might have a knock-on effect.
If you're trying to fly to Jamaica, probably you can't right now. Is that the whole situation?
Well, you definitely want to keep an eye on the situation. So the air controllers are back to work, but other industries, other civil service industries are striking. So yeah, pretty crazy. So we have an exclusive interview coming up this morning with the Deputy Premier, Mr. Chris Saunders, and he's going to be making a few announcements that might surprise you guys. So I think everybody should tune in if you can. Take a musical break and tune into that interview.
What's going down? What are you going to give us here on Kiss FM?
Well, one of the things that he revealed is that the work permit process is going to be completely automated.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a big deal.
That is a huge deal.
Yes. So it's coming, and that means for a lot of employers, fast tracking work permits, it'll be easier to at least go through the process. So, in a shorter space of time, whether it's deferred, denied, whatever, you upload it. And certain employers will be given a little bit of a preference, like if it's a job that they know because of the mandatory database that no Caymanians are registered for. One example he gave is like a neurosurgeon. It's not like you're going to have, 100 Caymanians registered for that particular job. And provided there are none, then that would be a work permit that would, kind of automatically be approved almost once all of the requisite paperwork is submitted.
Right.
So
And
quite
then
interesting.
when do we see that coming online?
No launch date as yet, but I feel like it's going to be coming relatively soon.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, very
And
good.
then, did you guys hear about this kind of bizarre story of these parents in Cuba who are suing their son and daughter-in-law demanding a grandchild?
I did.
Is that in Cuba? I saw it, but I didn't know.
No, this is India. Did I say Cuba? My apologies. That was India.
Oh, okay. In India.
I did see the story. Yes.
Yeah, so weird and bizarre.
They're suing them because they don't have grandchildren.
Because they want him to have a grandchild.
Yes. So they want them to pay. They said, you got to give us a grandchild within a year or pay 50 million rupees, which is equivalent of about $675,000.
Sure. Sure.
The soon-to-be grandfather probably is a 61-year-old retired government officer.
I mean, everybody who gets married has their parents going, "Hey, when are you going to have kids? When are you going to have kids?"
They just normally
I don't want to have kids,
I
guys.
want a grandchild.
Yeah.
That's pretty extreme to go.
Maybe he's not even married.
No, they're married.
Oh, and they're just like, meh.
Yeah, you know what?
So,
I'm gonna sue
They should
you.
adopt someone.
So listen to the logic that these parents are using. They're saying, listen, we have spent $65,000 sending you to pilot training school in the US. In 2006, they gave him a luxury car worth $80,000. His 5-star wedding at a 5-star hotel, and honeymoon in Thailand 6 years ago. So they're just saying, listen, we're getting old. We need a grandchild. But these people, referring to his son and daughter-in-law, have an attitude that they don't think about us. So, he said that,
So weird.
yeah, it's
So
funny.
weird.
Snot-nosed kids. I want some nuts.
Be appreciative. Give your parents a grandbaby. All right, folks.
All right. Catch
All right,
Sandy
bye.
Show on Bobo 89.1 FM coming up at 7:30 this morning. We'll see you tomorrow for more headlines. Thanks,
Sounds
Sandy.
good. Thanks.
All right. Our segment with CMR brought to you exclusively.
Trust me, that is just so bizarre and so crazy. All right, let's get all of our ducks geared up, our ducks in a row as we get ready to transition over to Bobo. So give me 1 second. Don't forget this morning, we're going until 10 o'clock. Get ready. Let's play a little national song to get y'all in the mood. And we do have Health City, who's going to be joining us first up this morning as well.
Peppermint, sorrel, ginger, beaver grass, or English. Get it ready. Your morning tea just got hotter.
Ooh, honey child.
On the cold, hard truth. Bobo 89.1 and Cayman's #1 talk show are bringing you morning talk like no one else. Monday Rewind, Impact Wednesdays, Caribbean Connections, and much more. Don't miss a beat with what's happening in the local community. Just keep sipping your tea.
What a mess.
Here's your host, live and direct from the Cayman Islands, Sandy Hill. Peppermint, sorrel, ginger, beaver grass, or English. Get it ready. Your morning tea just got hotter.
Ooh, honey child.
On the cold, hard truth. Bobo 89.1 and Cayman's #1 talk show are bringing you morning talk like no one else. Monday Rewind, Impact Wednesdays, Caribbean Connections, and much more. Don't miss a beat with what's happening in the local community. Just keep sipping your tea.
What a mess.
Here's your host, live and direct from the Cayman Islands, Sandy Hill.
All right, good morning, folks. Thank you so much for the notification. We do understand that there's a little bit of an issue, so we're just trying to look and see where that's coming from on radio. So we're going to see if we can get that sorted out rather quickly for you. Nope. All right, so give us 1 second. All right, we may have to log out and back in. Yeah, I pretty much leave all of my audio settings precisely the same so that we don't have any issues, but something seems to be awry this morning. Not quite sure what it is, to be honest, but let's see if we can figure it out. So, okay, just give us a second. So yeah, someone said that the audio is a little bit shaky. So let's see if we can get that sorted out before we invite our guests on the program. So good morning, everyone. All right, so let's just log out and log back in. Yeah, we try to make this the dummies version 101, but sometimes it just doesn't happen. So everything looks good on this end. All right, as they say, don't touch any buttons, don't do anything different. All right, so do let me know if there's any improvement on that audio, and then we can get started. Still no better, says Siobhan. Oh boy. Okay. Senior Chuck, I'm going to leave this in your hands. All right, so we'll leave it with Chuck. Maybe he needs to restart something on his end. Because yeah, like I said, we're very, very, it's like, don't touch the board. Don't touch any settings. Don't do anything at all, because we have to be certain that nothing bizarre is going on this end. Shamari, I do see you. Just give us a couple seconds. Let's see if we can get this sorted out in any way, shape, or form. Got another Rundown Tuesday here for you guys. A beautiful Tuesday here in the Cayman Islands. And I know you guys are really enjoying these Rundown Tuesday segments because you're always messaging me, telling me how educational you find them and informative and also a little bit of fun. You know, it doesn't have to be dull and uninteresting. It can be tons and tons of fun. So let's get some morning greetings out of the way this morning. We have Miss Virtuous Vernita, who's here. Irvlyn is joining us as well. Miss Rita, buenos dias to you. Wee Wee has got it locked. Good morning to Wee Wee. So good to see you. John is here, of course. Good morning to Marshall, Diamond Princess, Olivia, Desi. Good morning. She says, Cayman Brack and Little Cayman, what a beautiful day it is. And indeed it is. Louie, good morning. Top of the morning to you, my dear, joining us from Detroit. Nathina had a birthday over the weekend. How was your birthday? Happy birthday. Vanessa's got it locked. John says, Bobo. Yes, Bobo 89.1 FM. I know lots of people are tuned in there every single morning. And don't forget that this morning is our first morning where we're going into an additional half an hour. So we're going to actually run the show now going up until 10 o'clock. hey, popular demand. Everybody's saying, hey, we need you to go more. We need you to go longer in the mornings. And we've got a really full show this morning. So we're going to go ahead and get started here in a second with Health City. We've got Felicia joining us. Good morning to Chantel. Good morning, Pauline. Catherine is here. Diania says the radio is horrible this morning. They're looking into it. We are aware that there's something amiss, and we're having them look into it. Yes. Thank you, though, for letting us know. And good morning to Miss Beulah as well. So, yeah, you know, there's connection between here and the radio, and yeah. So I appreciate you guys telling me, because, of course, I can't hear the radio. So it's always good to know that there is something going on there. So good morning, Carmelie. Good morning to Jackie. And Celine is also here as well. So good morning, everyone. Beautiful day. All right, let's get it. Let me see here. So, all right. So let's go ahead and welcome our guests on the program this morning. We're going to be talking about Women's Health Week, which was just celebrated. So first up, a regular fixture every single Tuesday, Dr. Shamari. We might have to give you a doctorate after this. Mr. Shamari Scott, Chief Business Officer at Health City. Good morning.
Good morning, Sandy. How are you?
I'm good, Doc. How are you?
I've been called worse, so that's okay. So how was your weekend? Your
It was
Discovery
good.
Day weekend?
Yes, it was a nice Discovery weekend. Lots of fun things happened over the weekend, including I got my 23andMe DNA results. So tomorrow's show, we're going to be delving into that. We're going to do a deep dive. It's going to be fun.
So that's
I got
the one
some
that tells
relatives
you
on this island that I didn't know I had. So you guys got to tune in.
So what's that? Is that the one that tells you exactly your demographic of where your ancestors came from, or
yes,
the one
it tells
by
you
name?
everything, like health things, like what the color of your eyes should be. Like, it's super amazing.
Oh,
So,
wow.
and then it found some relatives. I'm like, I didn't know I'm related to that person. So we're gonna dive deep into that one tomorrow. So don't miss it. Okay, Dr. Pooja Monteiro. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Sandy. Good morning, Shamari. How are you guys doing?
We're doing wonderful. Thank you. So, Dr. Pooja, I hope I've gotten that correctly.
That's correct.
Is a consultant gynecologist at Health City, and we're going to be discussing with her this morning what are some of the things that she sees patients for, and we're going to dig a little bit deeper into actually some of the services that are available at Health City that fall under her remit. So good morning to both of you. So this is wonderful to be celebrating Women's Health Week. And, it's one of those things that, Shamari, you've got a wife who's a mom of 3 boys.
3 boys.
Super busy. And, women have their mothers, they're professionals, they do stuff in the community, their daughters. So there's certain expectations that come from, the family that they kind of, have separated themselves from once they get married. There's just so much on a woman's plate that she is expected to do, that it's a lot, and you've got to take time to, of course, prioritize your health. And so tell us how Health City is going to assist a woman in making sure that she is doing the things that she needs to do to take care of herself first, so that she can then take care of other people.
Definitely. And just to start, Sandy, to say that Dr. Pooja has been with us a year before our world changed with COVID. So she was here in 2019, and then obviously 2020, the world was turned upside down. But it seems like she's been with us for a decade. But definitely Dr. Pooja came in at the right time, because especially as we move forward with our radiotherapy center and our cancer care center, Dr. Pooja also has experience when it comes to gynecology and oncology, which is cancer. And Dr. Pooja has 10 years of experience, and she is now one of the A team that we have here at Health City. And we're very pleased to have Dr. Pooja with us. And she has conducted over 900 procedures/surgeries. So it just tells you the level of experience that Dr. Pooja has, and why we definitely needed to bring her over to Cayman, so that the population could gain the benefit of her experience, but also the wider Caribbean and Latin America US, Canada, based on all of our target markets as well. But Sandy, you actually summed it up perfectly. When you're in the airplane, what they always tell you to do: get your oxygen mask first, take care of yourself first before you assist anybody else. Because if something happens to you, then you're not going to be able to be there to help everybody. And you're so correct. Like, at times, I look at my wife as an example, who is a professional, has 3 boys. She knows all of the activities. She has a chart up by day: who's picking up, who is dropping off, which doctor's appointment, and then obviously she takes care of the household, and is even helping.
Oh, it looks like you kind of dropped out there, Shamari. I think your connection.
Am I still there?
Yes, now you're back. Okay.
Okay, sorry. And even, interestingly enough, even recently, she was talking about the fact that she needed time to go see her personal doctor as well. And, as bad as it is, I said, okay, well, what can I do to take something off your plate so you can go and do that? So a lot of times we have these super women that put themselves on the back burner, and we need to ensure that they put themselves to the front. And that's why we have the Dr. Poojas of this world, as well as our executive health checks, that persons can come in for women's health. And we look forward to hearing about all of the different areas that Dr. Pooja can actually help with.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Pooja. And I'm sure that you, as a woman, can also relate to, just the balancing act that we all try to carry out. So first of all, thank you for joining the program. And let's talk a little bit about the gynecological services that you offer. So I see that there's a number of surgeries that are available. And, these are things that a lot of women are very, very familiar with. They either have suffered from some of these themselves, or they know a woman who has. For example, fibroids is something that I think is pretty common. Can you tell us a little bit about that procedure? And we'll discuss some of the others as well.
Right. So you're actually absolutely right, Sandy. Fibroids is something which is extremely common in this part of the world. So when I came from India, so to give you a rough example of how common and how varied in size the fibroids are over here. So the women in India would have fibroids ranging from 2 centimeters, 3 centimeters. Seldom I would find someone with like a 6 to 10 to 12 centimeter fibroid. So say 1 in 200, 300 women would have a fibroid that large. But fortunately here in Cayman, there are probably 10 to 20 in 200 women who have a normal sized uterus. Most of them have fibroids ranging from 1 to probably, I think 25 centimeters has been the biggest that I've seen so far here till date. So it's just something which is very common. It has to
can I just ask you, do we have any idea why?
Yes, so I was coming to that. It actually has to do with our ethnicity and our race. So women of the African American descent or the Caribbean descent tend to have a higher chance of producing fibroids as opposed to Caucasian women. Women who it plays a strong genetic role as well. So you would generally notice women say, oh, my mom had fibroids, my sister had fibroids, and now I have fibroids too. So it has hereditary, which is an important contributor as well.
Very interesting. Well, I must say, I was kind of speaking to Shamari earlier about my 23andMe results, and there are things that have a genetic component, and sometimes genetic component is linked into your ethnicity, your race, where you're from, essentially, in terms of that. And then sometimes there's a family history, which can also impact your chances of catching certain things. And that's why I feel like a little bit of knowledge in terms of what you might be predisposed to can then put you on alert to at least be able to check for these diseases, or, whether it's fibroid, endometriosis, or other things, just to make sure that you're constantly keeping an eye on it. So, of course, I'm sure you'll tell us that most fibroids are very, nothing to worry about. Essentially, they're very, they'll come and they'll go, and
Yes.
there's little concern, but you have to be aware if you have a tendency to actually get fibroids that you do want to keep an eye on it. So, 1 month you might think, oh, this pain feels a little bit different. Don't ignore it, right? We need to be calling you.
Yes. So when it comes to fibroids, women get really, scared and worried when you say, "Oh, you have fibroids." But honestly, trust me, you have nothing to worry about. So imagine you have a pimple or a boil on your face. That's literally what a fibroid is on a uterus. So it's just a growth of muscle in the body of the uterus. Now, where exactly it is located within the uterus is what will define how it presents to us. So sometimes they're super teeny tiny. They can range from like less than a centimeter, like I said, to 25, 30 centimeters. But depends. So if you have a 1 centimeter fibroid, which is within the lining of the uterus. Now, when I say lining of the uterus, that's the place that you shed off the lining and you bleed every month when you see a period. So if that 1 centimeter fibroid is located within that lining, it's going to wreak havoc. So symptoms being you're going to have super heavy periods. And periods are going to be inconsistent. So they're just going to be heavier, heaviest. They are not going to stop. Generally with medications are not going to, sort them. They'll slow them down, but it's going to pick right up. It's not very amenable to medical treatment. Whereas the same 1 centimeter fibroid within the body of the uterus, that's in the muscle layer or on the outside layer of the uterus, is not going to give you any trouble. You have women who have fibroids as big as 10 and 12 centimeters, and they have zero symptoms from it. They come in for a routine pap smear or a health check or for something really different. And then when you examine them, you tell them you have this big, huge fibroid. It's just because the location of the fibroid is why it's not giving them any symptoms. So like you rightly said, every fibroid that you find, you do not need to treat. You might have someone who has 10 fibroids, but they're teeny tiny. They're not causing any trouble. We don't touch something which doesn't trouble us.
Right.
That's the general basic ground rule. And not every fibroid which is causing symptoms needs surgeries. There are medical therapies that can and should be tried, before jumping the gun and saying, hey, you need surgery for every single fibroid. But at the end of the day, of course, we have surgery, and medical technology is advanced to such an extent that, you come in the morning, you go home in the evening, or probably just the next day, you have like 2 or 3 teeny tiny scars. The biggest one is around a centimeter. You don't feel any pain. You can go back to work 2 days after your surgery, and no one could tell that you've had such a major surgery.
Amazing. Now, of course, we want to encourage our listeners to know that as a woman, your sort of gynecological needs start from puberty. So let's begin there a little bit, because I think a lot of women wait until they're in their 20s or their 30s before even having a proper first exam. Why is it important to start examinations earlier as a young, basically a teenager?
So it's best to start your examinations when you start getting sexually active. That's when, you need to come in for an STD check. That's a sexually transmitted disease panel check. Every single sexually active woman who is not, or probably who is even in a committed relationship, because you know how the world works right now. It's always advisable to have the sexually transmitted disease panel once every year. So that should be the beginning of your journey with your gynecologist, where you attain sexual health. Even before that, children, adolescents need to get vaccinated against HPV. That stands for human papilloma virus. That's the virus which causes cervical cancer and all of the precancerous changes which we look for on a pap smear. So that starts at school-going age, but you don't need to see your gynecologist for that. You can just see your pediatrician, your GP, and I believe it's a part of the school vaccination schedule here in Cayman. So it starts from there. Then you come when you're sexually active. Your pap smears start at the age of 21, and then you go on from there. So your visit, like you rightly said, starts when you attain puberty and when you are actually sexually active.
And just as a note, in terms of the HPV vaccine, so they can start at age 9.
Yes.
But they have a series that they do on or after their 15th birthday. They actually do 3 doses. And by the way, our young men also need to be protected, because a lot of people think,
Yes.
oh, HPV, it's only cervical cancer. But in order to stop the spread of it, you should be vaccinating your young men as well.
Yes,
So,
and not only the spread of cervical cancer, it actually prevents anal cancers, penile cancers in men, as it does cervical cancer in women.
Yes. Okay. So make sure, folks, that you're aware that there are other vaccines other than the baby ones as you come into your teenage years and adulthood that you should be getting as well. So
one thing that I would like to put out there about the HPV vaccine is that, there are some women who think, oh, I've been vaccinated, I don't need to do pap smears anymore. That's just a wrong notion that is out there. The HPV vaccine provides you around 75 to 80% protection. Now we have the better vaccines, the nonavalent vaccines, which are providing around, I want to say roughly close to 90 to 95%. But 5% is still a huge number when you look at the population, which means that you are not immune to cervical cancer. It decreases your chances by 95%, but you are still in that bracket that you could be susceptible to it, which means you need to come in regularly for your pap smears. And when I say regular pap smears, this is again another misconception in Cayman for some reason, that you need to go in every year for a pap smear, which is not correct. You need to go in at least once every other year or once every 3 years if you are doing just a plain pap smear. But if you are doing a pap smear with a combined HPV test, which I think almost all of us are doing right now on island, the GPs and the gynecologists, you're good for the next 5 years if you have both the parts which are normal.
And can I ask a little bit about the HPV vaccine? So I know that ideally you want to start before a young person becomes sexually active.
Yes.
But people who are even in their 30s and 40s, particularly women, is it still too late for them, or can they? Because I know there's different strains of HPV. So
not really. So currently, the vaccines that we have that are available start from the age of 9, like you said. They go up to the age of 45. These are for your 2 vaccines which are presently in the schedule, but there are newer vaccines which are available right now, which have no upper age limit. So you can take it whenever you think you want to go ahead and take it. Like you rightly said, the best time to take it is when you are sexually naive, which means you've never ever been sexually active. That's when it offers maximum protection. So with the least or the lowest vaccine that's available, so which offers protection against the 2 or the 4 subtypes of the HPV, it would offer you around 75 to 80% protection if you have never been sexually active or you're sexually naive, versus someone who has been sexually active. It probably is going to give you, say, around 50 to 60% protection, which is again a phenomenal number. So every single woman who has not been vaccinated against it when they were sexually naive, please go ahead and get it done.
And in fact, it seems like the HPV infection is very, very common. There's over 100 varieties of HPV, and normally you'll find that people have at least 1 or 2 of those at some point during their lifetime.
Yes, and HPV does not only cause cervical cancer; it also causes a sexually transmitted disease. They cause warts in both men and women. But the good thing is the type of HPV virus that causes warts will not cause cancer, and vice versa. But these vaccines provide protection against both. So they provide protection against cervical cancer and against the sexually transmitted warts.
All right, folks. So some very, very good information for you. Sorry, here this morning with Dr. Pooja. And if you have any questions, feel free to tune in. I understand that the radio issue has been sorted. So, of course, a bright good morning to our Bobo 89.1 listeners as well. The telephone number, if you'd like to join the conversation, is 936-BOBO. That's 936-2626. So, folks, we're talking as part of our regularly scheduled Rundown Tuesday segments. We are here this morning with Health City, and they're talking about Women's Health Week. So, of course, we just had Mother's Day celebrations. I know a lot of you took the special lady in your life out for, brunch or whatever. But the most important thing that you can give that special woman in your life is, good health, a clean bill of health. So please encourage, whether it's your mom, your sisters, yourself, make it a priority. This year's theme was forward focus, achieving healthier futures together. So, the pandemic has caused a lot of stress on individuals, on families, and most certainly women in those families who are trying to juggle so many different responsibilities. I always chuckle every year when I see that little cartoon where the family says, "Oh, mom, we decided to give you the day off, and then we hired all of these people to fill in for you." And like, she's the single person, but they had to hire a chef, like a nurse, a cleaner, so it just speaks to the amazing role that women tend to play in families. And, sometimes you're a single parent, so that's even more stressful for you. You don't necessarily have a lot of emotional support, but you've got to make wellness a priority in both physical wellness and, of course, mental health wellness as well. So Dr. Pooja is here. She's a consultant gynecologist, and she's talking about some of the services that are directed specifically at women at the Health City facility there. So starting from puberty, folks, we're going to talk a little bit going into pregnancy, menopause, pelvic floor concerns. So let's talk about, as you get older as a woman. I was kind of chuckling this morning with the guys who wrote 106 about the Indian grandparents who are suing their kids because they want a baby.
Yes.
They're like, hurry up and give me, hurry up
and
and
it's
give me
not fake
grandchild.
news. It's real.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of crazy that they've decided to go that route with it. But, a lot of people feel it's interesting, but a lot of people feel like they can dictate when a woman has a child, or, they want to make, and most often it's very subtle, right? So your parents are not normally going to sue you over this, but they start asking you questions. Oh, you just got married. Great. When am I going to expect a baby? It's like they want you to be on this time schedule. Of course, those things may not align with what a woman necessarily wants. So it can be stressful in more ways than one. But when a woman decides for herself that she's going to have a baby and she's going to start that process of building and expanding her family, what are some of the things that she should be looking at even before starting the pregnancy journey?
So most importantly is to know your family history well, to know if there's a strong history of anything in particular, say something as silly as blood pressure, diabetes, but with you and your partner. You need to see if there's something that is a part of your genetic history. So say, for example, thalassemia, sickle cell anemia, things like this, Down syndrome, anything that runs in the family that you should be aware of. It's always advisable to go for a preconceptional counseling to your gynecologist or to your OB, to the do's and don'ts. They can guide you. We can guide you and tell you what to do, when to do, how to do. Certain tests can be run. Most women have been vaccinated against the rubella as babies. We take it as MMR vaccines, but there are some countries, where they do not or did not offer the rubella vaccine when they were kids, or parents were anti-vaxxers or things like that. So rubella is something that they definitely need to be vaccinated against before planning a pregnancy. So if you don't know your vaccination status against rubella, is always advisable to get the antibody levels checked, because it's just something as silly as chickenpox when you're not pregnant. But when you are pregnant, there is a 95 to 99% chances of affection of the baby in terms of deafness, intellectual disabilities, heart disorders, physical deformities, and nobody wants that.
Yeah.
So if there's something which can be avoided, it's best avoided.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very good. So, and as you then start to, some women, and we have to, probably address this a little bit, some women actually do have a bit of an issue conceiving.
Yes.
And so it might take longer than they thought. I'll give my life as an example. I waited until my 40s because, you always think you want everything to be perfect. And of course,
Absolutely.
You never get there. But, so I was a late mom, and it took over a year. It took some time. And so what are some of the things? What's the average length of time? I think the average probably is a year, but what's the average length of time in your experience for women to actually conceive once they're actively trying?
So as per medical science, it says that if you are actively trying for 1 full year and you haven't conceived, that's when you should be seeking medical attention. But most often what happens is in your mind you're trying, but you're not doing it on the days that you should be doing it. So you have
Right.
a fertile window. So if
Yes.
you aren't having intercourse on those days, ovulation occurs on one day in the 28-day cycle that you have,
Mhm.
and the egg, as we call it, the female egg remains alive only for 24 hours. So if you miss that 24-hour window, you're just going to have to wait the following month. So sometimes it's just a matter of, not being well informed as to, how to time your pregnancy and your fertile days and things like that. It can be something as silly as that. So here you are thinking, hey, I'm trying sincerely every month and it's not working. There's a problem with me. There's something wrong with my partner. We probably have to go the whole 9 yards into the IVF and the ART. But sometimes it's not that.
It's
But
just
having
timing.
said that, like you said, Sandy, now it's not like, back in the good old days where the women got married and had a baby and thought that was their life was fulfilled. Women are now more career oriented. They want to live their own lives first. They may or may not choose to have a baby. Either way is absolutely fine. It's the woman and the partner, of course. It's their decision at the end of the day. I don't think any external forces should be coming in, like the case that you heard of in India. So having said that, so we used to say that, 35 should be, you should try and conceive before the age of 35, because that's when you're considered a geriatric pregnancy is what we would label the term. However wrong that sounds, but that's what it would be called, an elderly pregnancy. But nowadays you see women who are conceiving well in their 40s. Like you said, you did. I know women who have conceived at the age of 42, at the age of 49. And not most, I would say majority of them have been by choice. A few of them, they've been trying for years and they couldn't, but they finally did. We're living in this day and age where, you shouldn't look down upon or frown upon someone who says, I was not able to conceive naturally. I had to use assisted reproductive techniques, or ART as we call it, or I had to have an IVF cycle. The end result is having a baby. Whether you had it naturally, whether you had it with an IVF, who cares? It doesn't matter.
Yeah. I mean, in my experience, I didn't have to go the IVF route, but one of the things I think a lot of people don't know about, and you can tell us a little bit about this procedure. And if you offer it, I forget what the medical term is, but basically they just have an exploratory look at your fallopian tubes, and putting that dye in there actually just opens everything up. And I understand that a lot of women, after having that procedure,
that's called hysterosalpingography in medical terms.
That's why I could remember it. That name. Whew. But yes, tell us the name once more.
Hysterosalpingography, or HSG.
Right.
For sure.
Yes. So tell us a little bit about that procedure, and do you guys offer that at Health City as well?
Yes, we do it. It's basically an X-ray that we take of the uterus while we are pushing in some dye. What that does is it tells us the status of the tubes mainly. We need to know whether the tubes are blocked, whether they're open. It also gives us information on how the canal of the uterus, or the cavity of the uterus, where the baby is actually going to be lodged and residing for the next 9 months, looks like. If there's any polyp or a fibroid, well, it's not going to tell me there's a polyp or a fibroid, but it's going to show me that there is some defect over there which needs to be looked into. And like you rightly pointed out, sometimes the tubes, so the tubes have finger-like projections at the end. They call the fimbriae. Sometimes they just might be stuck together, not too tight, just some sticky, flimsy adhesions which we might find. And when we push in the dye, they tend to open up. But then there's another subset of women where when you push in the dye, because of that reaction that happens, the tubes tend to close up because it thinks it's a foreign body. So that wrongly gets labeled as blocked tubes. So we generally, when we have a situation where the tubes are blocked at the absolute ends, we take it with a pinch of salt, and we would probably offer you the next step, which is a diagnostic laparoscopy, wherein it's a keyhole surgery. So we go in through your belly button with a thin camera. We look at what's happening on the inside, and we would be pushing a dye live during surgery. So since the patient is under general anesthesia. So the tubes will not react and will not close off to that sudden stimulation. So that's how we would know.
Right. And because from experience, I can tell you it is you've got about 10 minutes where you are in a little bit of excruciating pain. So it's not the most comfortable thing in the world.
Yep.
But yes, so I could see where, as you say, your body might react by actually tightening up even more. So very, very interesting. So you offer a lot of services for women. We've got the laparoscopic surgeries, which you just mentioned, one type. You've got sling surgeries. What is sling surgeries?
So sling surgeries are for women who have had a prolapse. Prolapse is when you would notice the vagina bulging out, into the vaginal cavity or outside the vaginal cavity. Generally happens for women who have had multiple vaginal births, who have given, birth vaginally multiple times, who have had instrumental birth. So with forceps, with a vacuum, who've had a big, huge tear. And women who have, crossed over the threshold and have gone through menopause. So this is the most common picture that you would see someone with a prolapse But then there's a subset of women who have the prolapse in their younger days. So they've just given birth once, and you find that second pregnancy onwards, when you examine them in the pregnancy, you would notice that the cervix is outside the vaginal canal. So these are the women who generally the sling surgery is offered to. So they want to retain their uterus because they haven't completed their families yet, and or even if they've completed their families, they're very, very young, that we do not remove the uterus. That's when we would offer sling surgery. So literally imagine a sling which is pulling something back, and it's hitched to either the bone or the fascia, which is just underneath the abdominal wall. So just underneath the layer of the fat, we have a thick, strong tissue which is holding everything back in place, separating your insides from your outsides. That's where the womb gets hitched onto. Of course, when you've hit menopause and you go on to the other side, we generally prefer to do a hysterectomy, and most often it is a vaginal hysterectomy. So we would vaginally do the surgery and hitch up your tissues depending on how bad the prolapse is. So we have levels of prolapse. Even now for that, we have laparoscopic surgeries or keyhole surgeries for a stronger hitch for someone who has a 4th degree or a procedentia or a complete prolapse, as we call it, which is not very common. Up to a 3rd degree prolapse is managed beautifully vaginally, but I really wouldn't recommend someone with a 4th degree or a complete prolapse to have a vaginal surgery.
Wow. That's a lot to take in. So, having a baby, when I spoke to my OBGYN after the pregnancy, he said, Sandy, a woman is most at risk for dying, sort of prematurely, during her pregnancy and after like the first, I think maybe 6 months or 3 months after a pregnancy, but your risk of something just going wrong, because again, I think we underappreciate what happens when a woman has a child. I mean, it's an amazing production, and there's so many things in your body that are trying to work together to ensure that you can bring this life full term, a healthy baby. And I know a lot of women do it, but equally there are a lot of women who miscarriage, or they may have issues along the way that make a pregnancy difficult. And so, if you've never been through any of those situations and you've had 3 or 4 children, perhaps you don't give it a lot of thought. But when you've had a situation, you go, whoa, again, just sort of relying on personal experience. I decided, late in life to have that child. But of course, that put me at risk of things, gestational diabetes, which I didn't thankfully have, but, high blood pressure, all these things that you have to really consider. So tell us about the importance of ensuring that as a woman, that once you've begun the pregnancy journey, that you're ensuring that throughout your pregnancy, especially if you're perhaps 35 plus, that you're really getting regular routine checks, and how often should you be doing those throughout the pregnancy?
Yes. So pregnancy is a physiological process, but like you said, we shouldn't take it lightly. I've seen some horror cases back in my day when I was back home in India. So I worked in a center where we would have 70 to 80 births a day in 24 hours. And it was a tertiary referral center. So everything in the textbook, there's nothing in the textbook that was spared. Everything has been seen, from the most you can imagine it, and we've seen it. So that's not something that you should take lightly. You should be going often for your checks. So when it comes to pregnancy checks, you should be doing it once when you test positive on a home pregnancy kit. That's when you should be seeing your OB the first time. They will run a scan. They will run a few blood tests and do a vaginal scan to date your pregnancy, to tell you how many weeks pregnant you are, whether the pregnancy is within the womb, whether you're having a single pregnancy, whether you're having twins or triplets, whether the pregnancy is an ectopic pregnancy, whether the baby's heartbeat is there or not, whether it's at the correct menstrual age that you are at. So if you think you are 6 weeks pregnant, the scan might say otherwise. It might say you're 4 weeks, or you're 5 weeks, or you're probably 8 weeks instead of 6 weeks. So that's what that tells us. Then you go in for monthly checks thereafter, till you hit your 7 months or 28 weeks, after which it becomes around 2 to 3 weeks till you reach 32 weeks. And then from 32 to 34 onwards, you go in for weekly checks. Of course, along the way, if you develop something like gestational diabetes, gestational hypertension, that's blood pressure issues during pregnancy, you will be monitored more closely. You may have to go in for more frequent checks, probably weekly checks, twice weekly checks, depending on how bad or how good your condition is.
And it's very important to catch these things early, because, for example, if you have gestational diabetes, that can have implications not just for the mother, but also for the child.
Yes. So you are at a risk of big babies or high birth weight babies. So when we say big babies, we all think, oh, cute, chubby little things, but they're not big, healthy babies. They're just big babies. You are at a risk of preterm births. You are at a risk of sudden fetal demise or an intrauterine fetal death. You are at a risk of, like I said, meconium staining of the baby. So fetal distress, all of these things. So your diabetes definitely is something that needs to be well controlled and monitored. If you have a big baby, you will end up having a C-section, because nobody's going to offer you a vaginal birth. You should not be offered a vaginal birth if the baby is above a certain weight, which is around 4 kilograms. I speak in kilos. I'm still on
trying to figure out pounds.
Yes. So more than 4 kilograms is definitely not advisable to have a vaginal birth, because of the multitude of risk factors, because the baby can literally get stuck in the vaginal canal, which is an emergency situation. So we do not offer that. So then you come up with C-sections, and because you have the diabetes, that puts you at a risk for improper wound healing and so on and so forth.
So 4 kilos is 8.82 pounds. That's a big baby. That's like a bowling ball. That's not a baby. So folks, I mean, you've got to make sure that you're going to your regular appointments. And in my case, again, because I was a little bit older, I was a little bit more conscious of ensuring that was happening. And we actually caught a situation where I felt fine. I didn't necessarily have any issues, but for some reason, the placenta wasn't really supporting the baby as much as it should have been. So she was a preemie. She ended up being a preemie and low weight. But, throughout the pregnancy, it was one of those situations where I went to one of the experts in Miami, and he said, listen, if you were my patient, I would actually put you at bed rest. And this was like 3-4 months in. He's like, I would put you on bed rest immediately. And for the remainder of the program of the pregnancy, you'd remain on bed rest. And I thought, oh my gosh. And the alternative for that was just weekly checks, ultrasounds, visits and just doing everything. And this was at the height of Zika, which we were all afraid of. Like, we didn't even know, how Zika was going to pan out. And of course, everybody was scared who was pregnant at the time of getting bitten by a mosquito and thinking that, your baby could have been infected with Zika. So lots of scary things that can happen during a pregnancy, folks, that really, I think put both the woman, the baby, and the entire family under stress. But of course, your mental health and wellness is really important as well. So let's not forget that at Health City, they have an entire complement of services. So a few weeks back, we were speaking to their doctor, their physician who does all the psychological services. So if you need counseling or you're stressed out, make sure that you know that you can reach out to those individuals for additional support as well. So we're being joined by Dr. Pooja from Health City this morning. Chantal has a question. She says, after prolapse, why do women get UTIs after having the sling put in? So tell us a little bit about that.
So if somebody is getting frequent UTIs after having the sling put in, it means that it's probably eroding the bladder, which it shouldn't be. You should see your gynecologist for it. They probably will send you to the urologist, who will put in a camera through the bladder just to make sure that there is no erosion happening there. So if there is no erosion, it might be another reason. So it might just be a coincidence that the sling is there and you are experiencing UTIs. As long as the bladder is intact and the sling is not affecting it, it wouldn't be the cause for it.
Interesting. So now let's talk a little bit about a vaginoplasty. So this is vaginal surgery, I guess cosmetic surgery.
Cosmetic, yes.
Yes.
So basically reconstructive vaginal surgery.
Yeah.
So there are women now, so the same way that you are worried about your external appearance, women are worried about their vaginal appearance, and rightly so. So, after having given birth 2 times, 3 times, they would find that the vagina is lax. It's lost what would I say? The luster that it had.
Yes.
So they would come in and opt for things like a vaginal repair or a vaginoplasty, where we would be tightening the vaginal introitus or the opening as you have it. Then the other form of vaginoplasty is the smaller lips, or the labia minora, as we call it. So we have the labia majora, which are the thick lips, and then you have the thinner or the smaller lips, which are called the labia minora. Some women have really long, big, elongated elephant ear-like labia minoras, which tend to make them extremely uncomfortable. It might rub against their undergarments. It might cause discomfort during sex, or they might just not like how it looks. So that's when we have corrective surgeries or vaginoplasties to offer. Super easy. You come in today, you go home in the evening. They tend to be, because of where it is located, it can be a little of a discomfort to sit down for the first few days. But after those first few days, you're absolutely fine. Takes around 6 weeks to heal completely for you to see what it would look like after it's completely healed. But results are absolutely good.
Yes. And folks, don't forget too that sometimes you've had another medical procedure. So whether it's radiation or excision of the vagina to treat cancers and other conditions, that then you would follow up with having the vaginoplasty done to kind of complete the repair of everything in your private areas. So very, very interesting. So any questions? 936-2626 is the telephone number. Can we talk about PFD, or pelvic floor disease? Now, I'm not really that familiar with this, so this is a new one for me. What is this?
So pelvic floor disease again comes in the gamut of prolapse. Basically, when I say prolapse, it could mean that the womb is shifting down, or it could mean that the bladder is shifting down, or the rectum is pushing up against the vagina. Basically, it's the laxity of the vagina which causes these conditions. So you will notice a bulge in the vagina. You might feel that intercourse is not pleasurable or not comfortable anymore. You might notice some kind of, spotting to bleeding, and it feels like there's been like an excoriation or an abrasion down there. Or you might feel that there's a lot of discharge that's coming in, like white discharge, like most women complain of. That's the feeling that you would get, that or you might feel there's something in the vagina which is kind of blocking it. So this comprises of pelvic floor diseases, apart from dysfunction. So apart from this, you also have dyspareunia, which is pain during intercourse, which could have a variety of reasons. One is the prolapse. The most common reason is endometriosis, which a lot of women suffer with. Endometriosis is when the lining of the uterus that is supposed to be shed out during a period
Mhm.
grows outside of the lining of the uterus. So it could be growing anywhere. It could be growing on your bladder. It could be growing on the rectum. It could be growing on the side walls of the pelvis. Or it
Mhm.
could be growing, if you've had a surgery, it could be growing on the inner side of the scar of the surgery. You name it. We've had cases of endometriosis where it was growing in the intestine. We've had it where it was growing, it presented as a hernia, and these are at Health City that I'm talking about. So one
Mhm.
presented as a hernia, one presented as intestinal obstruction. We have one who is currently being evaluated because she has nosebleeds every time she has a period. So we're
Mm.
suspecting that she has endometriosis, of course, in the nose. There are cases
Oh,
reported
wow.
of endometriosis almost every single place in the body. And most common symptoms for endometriosis is excruciating pain. So women do tend to have pain during their periods. So generally, when your periods are coming, like a day or two prior, you'll know, hey, yeah, my periods are about to come, and you'll have cramps for like a couple of days into your periods. But in endometriosis, the typical presentation is like a week and a half before your period comes is when the
Mhm.
pain would start. It heightens during your periods and then goes down, say a week after. So imagine 3 weeks of the 4 weeks you are in pain.
Wow.
So that is the enormity and the extent. Now, this is the textbook picture of endometriosis. This is with someone who has full-blown endometriosis.
Mhm.
But even with someone who has, teeny tiny bits and spots of endometriosis here and there, they can have a lot of pain. So when a woman tells you that, I am in pain, don't dismiss it and say, hey, this is normal, deal with it, everybody gets
Mhm.
periods. So it's not even the men who put you down. It would be another woman, it could be a sister, your mother, your daughter, who would say, I've gone through it too, I have period pains too, so don't
Mhm.
don't be a baby, don't fuss about it too much. Just
Mhm.
learn to live with it. Sometimes it might be that the pain that you have is not the pain that this next person is facing. So be empathetic,
Mhm.
or at least offer a listening ear.
Right. Wow. And of course, seek professional advice, which is what
Definitely.
Dr. Pooja is there for, folks. So again, you can reach out to Health City at 640-4040, info@healthcity.ky. So we're focusing this morning as part of the, Mother's Day celebration and Women's Health Week on some of the services that Health City offers specific to women. So quite a bit we've talked about, puberty, getting started, pregnancies. Let's talk as we get a little bit older, start to hit the menopausal stages. It's amazing to me, Dr. Pooja, how so many women have never had this conversation with anyone. Like, when does menopause start? How can I know what's going on? We're kind of just, I think, thrown into our life cycles, and we're expected to know what's going to happen. So of course we have professionals like yourself who can tell us a little bit more about what to expect.
Right. So menopause is defined as the period where a woman stops seeing her periods for one complete year. That
Mhm.
is what menopause would be. But the period 2 to 5 years before and 2 to 5 years after would be
Mhm.
considered perimenopause. So before and after menopause. Your symptoms can start anyway from 2 to 5 years before you hit menopause to 2 to 5 years
Mhm.
after. Symptoms being, something as silly as, oh, I've put on weight, there's increased hair growth on my face, or something more serious like hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, irritability, osteoporosis. All of these are so osteoporosis is of course not a symptom, but you will have bone pains or easy tendency to break your bones or repeated frequent fractures. That's what osteoporosis would present as. These are the few symptoms that menopause comes with: vaginal dryness, pain during intercourse. Um, these are the symptoms. So now, does every woman undergoing menopause have these symptoms? Thankfully, not. But there are a
Mhm.
few who have the full-blown effects of, they are not able to function because of their hot flashes. They are not able to sustain relationships because of their mood swings. They are the
Mhm.
ones that need treatment. So there is this misconception in the community that once I'm going close to menopause, or I've crossed the threshold where I've crossed my 45, 55, 45, 46, I need to start hormone replacement therapy. Absolutely not. Hormone replacement therapy is only recommended for women who have symptoms of menopause. And when I say symptoms, it's not every symptom. So if you have weight gain, you're not going to be given hormone replacement therapy. If you feel that your skin is wrinkling up, it's drying, your hair is falling, those are not, recommended symptoms for hormone replacement therapy. You will receive hormone replacement therapy, on the other hand, if you do have hot flashes, if you have night sweats, if you have severe mood swings, if you have osteopenia or osteoporosis, if you have vaginal dryness. These are the symptoms that hormone replacement therapy is recommended for. You do not need a hormone panel to be done. No woman needs a routine hormone panel to be done. This is another misconception over here, that once I cross 45, I need to check my hormones. Your hormones are going to be low. That is how it is supposed to be. Just because it's low, we're not going to treat it. And so if I have the symptoms, again, why do I need to look for the hormones? Because I'm not looking at the numbers to start a particular dose. Once I reach a certain, so what happens is you will have a hormone panel which is done, and you will have the symptoms, and then probably 6 months down the line they will repeat the hormone panel. Probably your levels are almost normal, but that doesn't mean we stop the HRT. It's not going to solve anything. So we take symptoms as a guide for treatment. Another strong point to put forth here is women who go on hormone replacement therapy, because the effects are phenomenal and splendid, they do not want to stop. They do not wish to stop. So if you have hot flashes, it doesn't mean that you're going to have hot flashes for the rest of your life. They're probably going to remain for a year, 2 years, maybe 5 years, maybe 7 years. So hormone replacement therapy is finite. It should have an expiry date. Probably, so when a woman is young, when she's 40 something, we probably will put you on hormones for the first 3-4 years when we expect that you would be in menopause. Once that happens, we give you a break. We see how you're doing. If your symptoms have gone away, we don't need to restart the hormones. Some women restart the symptoms again. They start showing hot flashes again. That's when we have to restart. But again, every year, every 6 months, we try and take a break and see whether we've reached the stage where we don't need the medications anymore. These hormones are meant for these symptoms, but they're all double-edged swords at the end of the day. They come with their own set of side effects. So they are best avoided if they're not required.
Right. So they're used to help you if you need it. And, looking at your symptoms could be an indication of whether or not you're going to be able to benefit from that on a temporary basis.
Yes. So most women will benefit from it, even if you don't have symptoms. So even if there's a woman who says, oh, I didn't have a single hot flash, I didn't have night sweats, I don't have any trouble having sex, I feel just fine. And if you start them on hormones, they will say that, oh, I'm feeling much better than what I was feeling. My skin looks beautiful. My hair is great. It will have positive effects on every woman, but it's not recommended for it.
Right. Because what are some of the downsides if you stay in hormone therapy?
Most common side effects are weight gain, which most of us women are worried about. But the disastrous side effects could be blood clots, so these are steroid hormones, which means they are fat hormones, to put it simply. Your blood it's pumped from your heart, it runs a course through the body. When it's working against gravity and coming up from your feet and your legs to your heart, that's when the problem occurs. So if these fatty hormones, they tend to increase the viscosity or the thickness of the blood, literally. So it takes that much longer for the blood to reach back to your heart, which means that there is an increased chance to produce blood clots. Now, if the blood clots are contained to your leg, it's somewhat a slightly better situation than it would if it was dislodged and it were to move to your say your heart, your lung, your
Or
brain.
your lungs, yes.
Exactly. So you will end up with stroke or a heart attack, cardiac arrest, or pulmonary thromboembolism, where you have shortness of breath. I've seen women who've had a blood clot in their wrist, in their kidney,
Oh, wow.
at the back of their eye, in their brain. And this is not necessarily only with menopause. This is also with younger women who are on birth control pills.
Yes.
So very, very common. So as per my textbooks, it's one of the rare side effects for birth control and hormone replacement. But the number of women that I have seen who are currently going through a situation, or who have had an issue of blood clots related to hormones, or who know someone in the family who has had it, is not even funny. It's like, it's definitely not rare by any standards. So that is another side effect. Breast cancer is another major side effect for hormone replacement therapy. So when you are on hormones of any kind, so be it birth control, be it hormone replacement therapy, you need to be seeing your gynecologist as you are advised. So surveillance is of utmost importance. Generally, we would ask you to come in once every year. A couple of blood tests would be run, a physical would be done, probably an ultrasound, a breast examination, very important, in the course of the 1 year, if you experience any symptoms. So we've had women who've come and said, oh, I've developed some lump in my breast. It's painful. There have been lumps, thankfully not cancerous, but which could go on to become cancer. And that's the time we have to say, stop, you are not a candidate for hormonal therapy any longer. We will have to look for alternative therapies in those instances.
Now, you mentioned birth control as well. Is there a point in time in a woman's life when she should come off of birth control and try to find perhaps more natural methods that don't interject any hormones into her body? Because we know that birth control isn't necessarily like the pill, and different forms of birth control isn't ideal for every single person. So let's talk about what some of the considerations are as a woman is contemplating if she's going to get on birth control, and what method might be best suited for her.
So birth control should be stopped only when you hit menopause and your doctor has positively told you, yes, you are in menopause now and you do not run the risk of getting pregnant. Whether you should move on to the natural way, that depends. That's everybody's personal choice. But in terms of the pills, so now we have different kinds of pills. So you have the combined pill, which is the 2 hormone or the double hormone pill, that's the estrogen and the progesterone. And then you have the single hormone pill, that's the just the progesterone. So the estrogen and the progesterone is so the progesterone is the lesser of the 2 evils when you look at both of these pills side by side. So someone who is in the upwards of 45, 46, we would not recommend the combined pill. We would recommend the progesterone only pill, or the other progesterone only contraceptives, which would be the 2 monthly or the 3 monthly shots, or the contraceptive implant which goes into your arm, or the contraceptive tea which goes into your womb. This is not the copper tea, this is the hormonal tea, or the progesterone tea, or the Mirena is the most common one. You have Mirena, you have Kylena. There are a variety of contraceptive devices which go into the womb. And you have your copper devices as well, which are copper teas, which just sit in the womb, and by the virtue of the copper, they just produce an enzyme reaction, no hormones whatsoever, and they take care of that. Now, with the progesterone, you're pretty safe in terms of, so why the estrogen containing pills are not really recommended is they put you at a higher risk for blood pressure issues. They put you at a higher risk for stroke. They put you at a higher risk for cardiac issues. That's the reason we prefer to use only the progesterone containing pills. Also, they put you at a higher risk for blood clots. Now, compared to the combined pills, the progesterone only pills have a significantly lower risk of blood clots. But if you talk about the implants and the contraceptive teas which fit into your womb, these have a zero risk for blood clots. So we're so sure that it's not going to produce a blood clot that if a woman presented with a blood clot while she had the IUD or the intrauterine device or the contraceptive arm implant, we would have to look for another reason as to why she threw the blood clot, or we would say we don't know where it came from. That's how safe these devices are.
Wow. So, folks, lots of information being provided here by Dr. Pooja. Evelyn wants to know, she said she missed the first part of the show. She needs to come and see you, and she wants to know where you're located. So, Evelyn, she's at Health City because this is Rundown Tuesday. So remember, folks, info@healthcity.ky. We have a team of individuals there, or they have a team, I should say, of individuals there who will contact you and follow up with whatever department you're actually interested in seeing. So if you need to get in contact with Dr. Pooja, who again has provided some phenomenal information, Magdalene agrees that this has been a great show. Dr. Pooja, I feel like we're going to have you back because there's so many things that we did not have an opportunity to get into. For example, the polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is something that a lot of women suffer from. And I don't want us to kind of gloss over that. So can we leave that for another segment, perhaps when we have you back? Shamari, Dr. Pooja she's in high demand. She needs to come back.
Definitely. And just to mention that Dr. Pooja, we have the saying within your reach. Dr. Pooja also has consultation hours in Cayman Bay during the week. So you can always call in or info@healthcity.ky if you would prefer to see her at Cayman Bay and understand which days she'll be there, so that you can also see her there as well. And Sandy, before we end the program, just to mention, all things women health, we extended our executive health check promotion through to the end of May. So persons can still get that for $500 US, and mostly your wellness benefit will help you to get that covered. And our mammogram promotion for $150 US also goes through to the end of May. So many different things that Health City is providing that you can come and take care of your health and understand what's going on with you to make sure that you're the healthiest you moving forward for 2022.
Wow, amazing. So Chantal agrees. She says, thank you very much. Alita says, good morning. Great segment this morning. Thanks to all involved. And Evelyn is happy. I think you'll be hearing from Evelyn. Dr. Pooja, you might be hearing from me as well, because I just want some additional information and a few things that you mentioned this morning. So folks, again, women's wellness is what we were discussing this morning. Really, really important topic. Prioritize your own health because as we said at the onset of the program, if you're not taking care of you, number one, nobody else is going to do it. And number two, the other people in your life that rely on you, whether it's a spouse, children, your parents, siblings, whatever, they need you to be the best version of you that's possible. Exactly. So Women's Health Week was the 8th through the 15th. We just celebrated Mother's Day. The focus and the theme this year has been forward focus, achieving healthier futures together. So make your health a priority. There's a lot of options and procedures available at Health City, again, whether it's managing endometriosis, taking care of fibroids. They've got minimally invasive procedures that are done every single day there at the facility. So let's ensure that, you speak to Dr. Pooja and others as part of your overall mental and physical health and wellness. And Shamari has just reminded us about the wonderful specials that they have on that you can take advantage of. That's going to go easier on your pocketbooks. And of course, if you have insurance coverage, you can speak to them about what portions your insurance might pick up as well. All right, Shamari, thank you so much. Dr. Pooja, it was so nice to meet you.
Same here, Sandy. Pleasure was all mine.
All right. So, folks, tune in every single Tuesday here on Rundown Tuesday. Shamari always has his entire team at Health City, has a lot of interesting topics for us. Very, very educational. I never have a Rundown Tuesday segment that I do not learn something. And I hope that you guys are finding that to be the case as well. And don't be shy. You can call in, ask your questions, 936-2626. Evelyn says, awesome show. She absolutely loved it. Shamari, thank you so much. We'll see you next week.
Awesome. Yeah.
All right. Good stuff. So, and guess what? We've got an exclusive interview coming up here in just a few minutes with none other than Deputy Premier, Mr. Christopher Saunders. So you definitely do not want to miss that interview. We learned a lot as well. So that's going to be coming up here shortly. So let's just take a quick commercial break and we'll be right back after these messages.
Recover Personal Injury Attorneys, helping injured people get what they deserve. Did you know that insurance companies have lawyers that represent their interests? Before signing and accepting any settlement, know your rights. Call us today for a free consultation at 924-9999. That's 924-9999. Recover. Your personal injury attorneys are on standby to assist.
All right, folks, and don't forget that Recover, they deal specifically with personal injury. We're going to learn a little bit more about their services on tomorrow's program. But let me assure you, good folks, that they're part of the Broadhurst team. And hey, they helped me win my defamation lawsuit. So I'm all about telling you guys who are the best in the game. And you definitely want to speak to Kyle and the crew over there. We do have a caller to the program. Good morning, caller, and welcome. Uh-oh. Don't know what happened. Don't know if they ran out of credit or what happened. All right, folks. So listen, on tomorrow's program, we got a lot of fun things that are coming up that we will be discussing, including over the weekend. There was a big to-do about some street vendors selling at the bus stop. So of course, this is not going to go under radar in terms of our discussions. We're going to be digging a bit deeper into that conversation yesterday. A couple of things that we actually need to talk about. So Loretta is also saying educational program today's show. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, a lot of people love these segments, and you know, it's packed full of information. Like today I was jotting down some notes like, oh, I need to follow up and ask about this for my own care. But yes, on tomorrow's show, we're going to be talking about street vendors and what is it that DCI is doing or not doing as it relates to street vendors. And it needs to be discussed. It's one of those community issues that's really, really important. We also need to talk about, as you guys may have heard, there's a formula shortage in the US in particular. And we're going to talk about why that formula shortage has occurred. And is that actually going to impact us here in the Cayman Islands? We've already reached out to some of the local grocery stores to inquire what their current position is, and we'll give you guys an update on that as well. What else is on tomorrow's agenda? Of course, we got to talk about my 23andMe test results. So y'all want to hear exactly where I'm from and who I'm family to here in the Cayman Islands, which is super, super interesting. I learned a lot about myself just from looking at 23andMe. And some of it was actually in relation to my health. A bit of a shocker. So you guys definitely want to tune in for that as well. So folks, get your second cup of coffee, your second cup of tea, whatever it is you're drinking. We're going straight up until 10 o'clock this morning. And we're going to go ahead now and switch gears and have an interview with Deputy Premier Saunders. So in this interview, Deputy Premier Saunders provide us with a lot of information, specifically as it relates to the budget results that just came out for the first quarter of 2022. So sit back and enjoy, folks. All right, good morning, folks. So we're having a special interview with the Deputy Premier and Minister for Finance and Economic Development, the Honorable Chris Saunders, who's joining us here to talk about the government's latest unaudited financial report for the first quarter of 2021. So good morning to Mr. Saunders. How are you?
Morning, Sandy. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure having you on the show. I believe this is your first time. So guess what? We're going to give you a little bit of a
my
treat.
First time in this format. If you
Yes.
go back to when you were at Pasadena Place, I did an interview there.
You were one of our first guests.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
So, took you this long to invite me
first
back.
time as minister.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
As an elected person, actually. Actually,
Yeah.
no, as minister.
No, as minister, because we had you on.
Yeah.
We had you on as elected.
Yeah.
You were probably the first or second guest of the
opposition.
program. So everybody, let's give Minister Saunders a quick applause. There we go. We love it. We love it. So the minister's here this morning to talk about some serious stuff, which is basically the first quarter results and the budget. And, you know, a lot of us we hear all these numbers, and I understand that sometimes we don't get it. We don't understand what it means. So I know the minister has a knack for really breaking it down in common language so that we can put it in perspective and understand what the true position is for the country. So I think we need to begin with the fact that the PAC government has only been, in power now for a year, which is a relatively short amount of time, especially when it comes to anything to do with the budget or projections or, where the country's financial position is. So, Minister, tell us when you got into office, where the country was and what we were looking at that particular time.
Okay, Sandy, before answering that question, I just want to make one bit of observation. Where this government is concerned, we don't see ourselves as being in power. We see ourselves as being in the seats of responsibility. The power in this business actually belongs to the people. So I just want to put the mindset out there a little bit so we all can make clear that's why we're a people-driven government. But when we came into to office back in 2021, I mean, one of the first things, I mean, if you look at the economic pre-election economic and financial update, one of the first things that we realized is that we're looking at a deficit for 2021 of roughly $98 million.
Wow.
And then when we drill down into those numbers, we realized that the forecast at the time for the stipend only went up to the month of May. So there was an additional 35 million that had to be added on to that number. So when we sat down, we realized that we literally had a hole of $133 million to climb out of for 2021. And then going into this year, the forecast had us losing. This is in central government. I just want to clarify that. I was losing $58 million. So, and the first task the premier gave him was, listen, DP, you need to sit down. We need to get all of these numbers. These numbers have become a reality.
Right.
The first thing that we did shortly thereafter was we kind of put in a process where any invoices over $5,000 literally had to be signed off by a minister. What that did was two things. One, it kind of made it a little bit more difficult in terms of spending, so people will realize that we are looking at expenses. We are going to, that's the one thing that we can't control. And then two, as a lot of new ministers were basically elected, it also gave them the opportunity to kind of get a kind of first hand of what was really going on in their ministry. I mean, the devil is always in the details to some extent. So it was kind of that learning curve, in the sense of we just really take the ground running. Credit a lot. I really have to give a lot of credit to the governor and the deputy governor, in the sense that they too are joining to the urgency of this, and we really, really needed to get certain things under control on expense side. But equally, one of the things that we also wanted to do was maintain the confidence in the economy, or improve the confidence in the economy, where people can feel as if though this is finally a government now that's really serious, not just about growth, but sustainable growth. So the good news of what I can say is that the 133 million that we're looking for 2021, we have literally turned that down into a 15 million deficit. So rather than 133 million, the black hole that we had to climb out of, we finished last year at around 15 million deficit. And then this year, rather than the 58 million deficit that were forecasted, we actually were looking within the budget of just under 20 million surplus.
So let's talk about, just to clarify, the 130 million versus 15. How did that happen? How did you guys manage?
Well, the revenues is really was revenue driven. The confidence in the economy. I mean, despite what people are saying, the confidence came in. The developers continue to develop. The coffers just continued. So there's a certain sense of optimism. I mean, which again, that normally followed a good election boost to some extent. So regardless of what people think, people felt a little more confidence from that standpoint. So that was really one of the main drivers in it, is on the revenue side. Financial services continued. The lands and survey, customs, everything just continued from that standpoint. So we're actually really happy, because one of the things about people gonna realize that with consumer confidence is that if you feel as if though you're going to have money next month, you have no problem spending money this month, because we're still a consumption-based society. So that confidence had to be there, where people not feeling as if I'm going to lose my job, or there's, we have passed the worst to some extent. So people are confident in terms of going out spending and everything else. So that was really one of the big boosts for us. And I think one of the main things that also helped is the government mindset, in the sense that from a policy standpoint, our philosophy is that we must remain a private sector driven economy. I mean, the mistake that many countries have made and many people have made is that it's very easy when you're sitting in government and you have a lot of cash and everything available to you, a lot of resources, that it is very easy for the government to want to do something. And I think the most important thing is to find a way to empower your people. Because at the end of the day, I think the Premier's campaign slogan said it best. We're community creates country. We want more things being done at the community level. One of the things that we have also included in this year's budget and next year's budget is more funding towards having community type events. Now, the COVID has limited a lot of stuff that we can do in that regard, but that's why we want to bring back the Air Show. We want to bring back the East End Bonfire, for the simple fact that if you look at Cayman and study our success, it was never based on immigration, but rather integration. People coming here and becoming a part of the fabric, becoming part of the community. And that is what we really want to get back to, in the sense of having that community spirit. Because the minute you create that, then it brings other things with it. I mean, people are quicker, there's less crime, people are quicker to report crime. And I mean, the recent unfortunate data breach that we had, where we saw the people who actually came in and then started telling us about abuse and stipend. I mean, a lot of them were their own family members. And it goes to show that there's still a sense of justice. There's that natural part of the Caymanian people to say, you know what, this is unfair, this is not right, someone needs to do something about it. And those are the things that make a difference.
Yes. Since you brought that up, let's touch on that just a little bit. Now, there are people who are conspiracy theorists who want to believe that the data breach was, not accidental. Can you go ahead and just set the
it definitely was. It was definitely accidental, and I really feel bad for the person who was responsible for it. Felt really bad, and I can tell you it was a genuine. I was upset at first when that happened, because at the end of the day, it is something serious. It is people private information. We have literally laws against that. That's the reason we have to go through, do the necessary filing, make the necessary reports available. But no, there was no conspiracy theory or nothing like that. Trust me, if we wanted to leak it, there are far more better ways where people stuff end up on windshield, but no, not the sort.
Yes. Okay, good. And so you mentioned that as a result of that, some very interesting developments, which include, some people, I mean, I didn't look at it in detail, but I just did a cursory glance of it. And I saw people who are working for government full-time, for example, and thinking, why are they still receiving this stipend? What percentage of people on that list do you think were actually trying to defraud the system or potentially take advantage of the system where there was not a genuine need? If you had to wager a guess, I know that obviously you had some reported to you, but
no. If I go back to my first press conference, where I said that we definitely weren't going to look at it. The truth of the fact is, Sandy, I never did, because once you go down that road, you can't not go. You can't stop yourself from going down there. And we just made the decision that rather than focus on the negative, we're just going to focus on getting people work and getting people assistance. Because worst case, at a minimum, you always will have 2% to 5% of fraud. I mean, and that's about anything that government does.
Right.
And I was not going to have my team. I already have a small ministry team as is. We weren't going to use our resources to go and look for that. We just made up our mind we weren't going to do it. So we accepted that there were going to be fraud in the system, and that would have been done. It is when people start reporting to us now. I mean, at that point, we're like, well, if people went out of their way to really report it to us as they would do any other crime, then we have a responsibility to actually do something about it. And that's the reason why we made that decision. But in terms of using our resources, I mean, we already have enough programs as it is right now. We're trying to get people trained up. We're trying to get as much of their system automated. I was not going to waste any of my resources, I mean, to go out there and find fraud. I mean, we just made that decision. We weren't going to do it.
Right.
And
okay.
I mean, so this just came out and it was accidental, and it genuinely was an accident. And I really do apologize to the many people again who received the stipend and their information was public. I really want to apologize again on behalf of my ministry for that error.
Right. And where are we with the stipend now? Are we coming closer to ending that entirely? Are we still months away?
It is, well, one of the things, and let me put it this way. As the minister with responsibility for labor, I have not yet discussed this in my caucus. So again, bound by collective responsibility. But one of the things that we want to maintain is support for working families, for working people. And I think we just need to find some way in which of packaging that where there should be my ministry or maybe Minister Andre ministry to deal with it going forward. But we do recognize that at the end of the day, tourism will not make it back for the majority of this year. I mean, Minister Brian has done an excellent job. I mean, we did a presentation, I think maybe a week ago, or a little over a week ago, where we saw the initial numbers. And the target for this year was to get back to 40% of 2019 numbers. And then the target for next year was to get back to 70% of 2019 numbers. And to Minister's Brian credit and his team at DOT and his Ministry of Tourism, they have already hit the 45% mark, I think, in the month of April in terms of the 2019 numbers. So the trending is there. The revenues haven't caught up yet, but the trending is there. So that we are a bit optimistic about. And then for next year, so I suspect, I mean, listen, I have to give Kennedy his due. He is fired up. He's ready to go. His team is motivated. They did a presentation last week on even some of the possible expansion routes that they're looking at. You know what I mean? So what I can say is that his ministry and his team is fully switched on. And that for us is one of the biggest things for us. Minister Andre team and financial services, I mean, is already on point. I mean, I looked at their first quarter numbers, and one of the things that we did was we went back, and because we know in financial services, the first quarter is normally the strongest. That's the reason you see the government position as is. Right. One of the things that I did, which I asked my team to pull together for me, was we went back the last 5 years and we look at what Q2, Q3, Q4 revenues were like. So then we add that on to like what the first quarter is, and also look at what percentage of first quarter revenues was a percentage of the whole and everything else. And we are optimistic that at least the numbers that we have included in the budget this year for revenues from financial services, we're definitely going to, I think we're going to surpass those. And again, it just goes to show that the confidence that we maintain within the financial services industry, you know, despite the different challenges. Minister Andre has been doing a very good job in that regard. And I think it also helps the fact that the Premier also was a previous Minister of Finance, Minister of Financial Services. So it's almost as if though you have double the expertise available within this government for such an important sector.
Right. So let's just have a look here. We have in the latest figures that were released just a few days ago, this is the comparison that you were just mentioning of quarter one financial performance over the last 3 years. So in fact, overall revenues, there's an increase.
73 million above 20 from 2019, up 73 million.
Wow. And then we've got different categories here: operating expenses, operating surplus, and then a surplus and deficit, surplus of the public sector, of the entire public sector, and then the total bank account balances. First of all, I don't recall, and I mean, you can certainly correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but I don't recall having received this level of information in previous elections or previous elected governments. Is that my imagination, or is this something new that your government has undertaken to do?
No, I think in fairness to the Ministry of Finance team with the Financial Secretary, the Accountant General, and those guys, they actually do publish information. I can tell you right now, the amount of information available, even from ESO, the Ministry of Finance, and many ministries across, is there. The civil service actually does a wonderful job in terms of getting information out. Where we fall down is that, you know, you gazette something, you publish something, but you don't spend the time out then to go and explain it to the public or put emphasis on it. You know what I mean? And again, these are the kind of stuff that makes a difference in terms of maintaining confidence in your economy, in the sense of what it is that the government, you know, what shot the government can take. Because at the end of the day, it is still the people's money.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I'm not going to sit back and depend on the media to just, okay, the government has made a gazette, we have published something, we have made a report public. I'm not going to sit back and just depend on the media to carry it. Because if that's the case, then the T that we have in our PAC government of being transparent is something that we wouldn't be living up to. So it's important for us, for the people, to know exactly where their finances are. So if you look, we also did it for the month of February too, when we had hit the $2 billion mark. And the plan actually is to provide monthly updates on government finances going forward. I mean, that's pretty much where we are. That's what our plan is for this year. So we missed the month of January because everything was a little hectic with year-end audits and everything else. And I looked at the January numbers. I know they were a little bit off in terms of accruals and everything else. So I didn't want to go out and knowing that we still have some adjustments to make in the month of January. So that's why we started with the February. We're doing March, and then as soon as we have the April numbers finalized, the press release will follow, so people can have an idea as to where we are as we move along. So we don't want anyone to have any surprises. And it's important for the people to realize that the government is in a strong position. I mean, we have hurricane season coming up. There are challenges that we'll have there within itself. So it's important for the people to know that their collective financial position is actually sound in case of any emergencies or anything else. So that's one of the things that we definitely want to look at. But at the same time, too, there is something that we're working on, because it's one thing for us or as the government or the people finances associated to be doing well, but we can't consider ourselves being well in government if the overall population isn't. So there's something that we're actually working on right now, and as soon as we finalize it, it's going to be lovely. I welcome it. Excuse me. The premier will actually be making that announcement hopefully soon. Something that we're working on, but I think people are going to be very, very happy in that regard.
All right. Sounds very, very enticing. So this next one, the summary of the financial position for core government, this is table 3. Can you just give us in layman's terms, what is it that we're looking at here?
Basically, what we're saying is, if you look at the total assets as of March 31, is a little over $3 billion, and the total liability is over $1 billion. So last month, for example, the month of when we did the February financials, I should say, because these are March, we were actually crossed the $2 billion in net assets, in the sense of we have a situation right now where the first time ever in February is when we hit the 2 billion mark in terms of net assets, and we're basically growing that from where we stand. So it's pretty much, again, a very good position to be in. One of the things, go back to, I think there was several slides. You can go back, I think, to table.
So this was the breakdown of revenues collected.
Yeah, there was a separate table, I think that was also an attachment that just kind of did that overall. Yeah, that one. Can you enlarge on that one?
Oh gosh, that might be as big as we can get it, Minister.
Okay, let me.
I know it can't.
Yeah, that's all right. I have it here.
Yes.
But just to put it in context, I mean.
So this is the executive summary.
Yeah, we included that because that's just like a snapshot of many of the different things. One of the things that we are looking at from that standpoint, I mean, if you were to go and Google countries with like the lowest debt to GDP, I mean, Cayman would be in the top 5. You know what I mean? So even with the borrowings that we had approved in the last budget, it would still put us in the top 5 in terms of a percentage. I mean, we are talking about, I mean, at the end of March, our total debt balance was $218 million. You know what I mean? But at 2019, just to put that in context, we were roughly at 418 million. So between 2019 and 2022, we have actually paid it down by almost $200 million. So we are moving in the right direction in that regard. But one of the main things for us the one thing that we are more concerned about, or the two things I should say, is one is pretty much getting the economy back up to full productivity. Tourism still has its challenges, and that's the reason why I love what Minister Brian is doing in that regard. But then the other is the cost of living, because you can recognize also that government is still the largest purchase of goods and services in a country.
Right.
And the same cost of living the people is also in our finances too. So right now at this very moment, Minister J is actually in Jamaica in terms of start looking at our own food security initiative. But one of the things that have always baffled us is that, we go to Florida, we buy a lot of stuff, but when you look at where those stuff come from, they're coming from Central and South American countries. They're coming from other Caribbean countries. So they're literally bypassing us, going up north. So it's taking way more time. We're losing freshness. We're losing shelf life, for it to go all the way up there and then come back down here.
It's costing more.
Yeah. So one of the things that we are looking at now, and again, I mean, kudos to Minister J in that regard, where we're now looking at what it is that we can do to partner, with Jamaica, Honduras, Costa Rica, Belize, Nicaragua, different places in terms of how we can start increasing direct imports from those countries to actually reduce costs and also increase in terms of increasing freshness from that regard. So it is an issue, and if you do look in most countries around the world, I mean, especially what's going on in Ukraine now, I mean, the amount of soya beans that come out of and wheat that come out of Russia and Ukraine. I mean, even India right now is even beginning to feel it from that standpoint. So it is one of the things that we have to take serious. And it's funny enough, we pay a lot of attention in different industries, from tech to banking to pharmaceutical and everything. The biggest industry everywhere worldwide is still agriculture. People still have to eat. There is no app for food. There is no app for that. You have to eat. You know, so those are the kind of things that we are looking to focus on. And if we can build these partnerships up, I mean, I spoke to Minister J up to 2 nights ago just to kind of get a feedback. Well, he calls me literally every day just to kind of check in, you know, to see how the day was going and everything else. And one of the things that we just want to make sure from a quality standpoint is that we have the proper people here in place to go to those different plants, do the proper inspection to make sure that they meet certain criteria and everything else. I mean, the good thing with bringing stuff in the States is that, you know, you have the FDA up there that actually looks at different things. But whereas here, we just need to make sure that if we're going to be bypassing the States, that at least we have the same inspector type regime in place to make sure that whatever is coming is a certain quality. I mean, baby food right now is one of the biggest things. That's a big issue right now. And of course, I mean, there are companies in the Caribbean that actually manufacture baby food. So it's about building those relationships up. I mean, last month, I think it was, you saw the premier in Barbados meet with some of the Caribbean people. And he's also been continuing to build those relationships with other Caribbean islands, because at the end of the day, in any emergency, they're still the closest neighbors that we have, whether for them to help us or for us to help them, but we're still part of the same region. So it's important for us to live good with our neighbors to some extent, you know what I mean? And if there's a shortage of something here, I mean, you know, the US, one of the first things, if there's a shortage, they may put a ban on exports. So from that standpoint, we just need to make sure that we have proper things in place to make sure that our people can still get the same goods and services, or in this case, more goods that they're used to getting, and that it is available and is of quality and also affordability.
And, you know, I'm so glad that you mentioned the baby food shortage, because just earlier today I was listening to an NPR interview with the FDA Commissioner, Mr. Robert Califf, on this. And it's very, very interesting what has happened and what has actually caused this. And it's because one of the plants, and, you know, there's only 4 manufacturers apparently in the US who account for some 90% of the baby formulas that are on the market, which is amazing when you think about that. But one of those had to be shut down by the FDA for you know, some quality control issues, and that shutdown has now resulted in this shortage. Albeit on the one hand, it's not as immense as people think, but it's big enough, and it's impacting, you know, of course, the underprivileged, the poor individuals, which are always the ones to be impacted by these sorts of shortages first. And so it is having quite a detrimental impact. There was a picture of, you know, shelves being completely empty of baby formula. And I mean, that's a necessity for people who, for whatever reason, are not able to give, you know, young infants, you know, breast milk. And there's a number of reasons why that could happen. So I think that more and more we're recognizing that food security is a concern worldwide, and definitely here in the Cayman Islands, it's a concern in the US as well. You know, they're looking at trying to get that plant back up to operations, but of course you can't ever compromise or risk food quality, especially things that you're giving to infants. So very, very tricky situation. But for the benefit of our listeners, I'm going to play that interview. It's just a 4 or 5 minute interview a bit later on, so that they can get a real understanding of exactly what's causing it and you know, what's happening. Because I think in the bigger scheme of things, we're a small island, and you know, we need to look at even larger countries than us are having chain supply issues. Sometimes because of COVID, sometimes because of, you know, what's happening in Europe, what's happening with the war in Ukraine. And, you know, we need to understand how our reliance on those countries or those entities can really impact, you know, everything right down to our food.
You are so right. As a matter of fact, when we were in Little Cayman, we had approved in caucus. I trying to remember if it was also on the cabinet agenda. It could have been on the cabinet agenda also, but I know for certain because it dominated our caucus discussion. Well, dominated part of our caucus discussion. A little Cayman. But what we did was we looked at the trade statistics that were actually prepared by the ESO. We basically made that public. But one of the things that we looked at was the amount of. We kind of did a detailed analysis of all the stuff that we were importing, and then we were asking basically between Minister Andre, myself, and Minister J, in terms of, you start importing $200-300 million worth of something. At some point, you have to ask yourself the question: can we do this here? You take, for example, at one point we had in Cayman dairy milk. We had our own. Excuse me. You'd have been old enough to remember when we had our own dairy farms here, and we literally used to have milk. Yeah, milk.
I might have been in the States at that time, but
yeah. Well, that's fine. Okay. But yeah, for people old enough, they remember, because up to the 50 years ago, up to the 70s, we were actually only importing around 30% of what we need. A lot of the stuff that we wanted, we actually used to do for ourselves. And then the question is, where did we, fall down? Typically, if we go back to the 80s, which they call a decade of excess, where a lot of countries who used to do things on their own, basically, America found themselves in a situation where they were overproducing, and as a result, they started to flood the global market. So it became cheaper to actually import something than to do it yourself. Now the question is, do we have to ask ourselves the question: is it now cheaper? And even if it is cheap, even if it is not, is it better for us in the long-term security that there are some things that we should be doing for ourselves? And I think that is one of the questions that we need to ask. So, one of the things that we learned very early in finance is be careful, the cost of everything and the price of nothing, because there's some things you can't put a price on, such as peace of mind, knowing that, yes, it may cost a little bit more, but at least it is yours, and, you have some level of security.
Yes. Just last week we had an interview with Mr. Norman Bodden. He was talking about that in reference to Cayman Airways and why, the government has been subsidizing Cayman Airways. But early on, as the first managing director at Cayman Airways, they understood the importance of really fighting for that airline to have our own independent airline, where anything that happened here in the Cayman Islands, our people had a route in and out of this country without having to rely on a foreign carrier. And he said that, sometimes it was a tough political battle to get people to understand the importance of that. And then there are other times, for example, Hurricane Ivan, that it became clear to everyone that having your own national airline was something that you almost can't put a price tag on.
Now, the thing about it is, I remember there was a time when I think government was subsidizing turtle farm to the tune of like 10 million. And I remember saying to somebody, at the time, turtle farm had that massive debt that they were carrying, which the government was paying. So even if they had, let's say, shut down turtle farm, the government would still be stuck with 6 million. So the real subsidy for turtle farm at the time we were looking at was really 4 million. And what were you getting for 4 million? An organization employed 100 people directly, another 500 indirectly, and had over 200,000 visitors a year. So then I asked someone, we're in Cayman, if you can get 600 people employed and over 200,000 visitors that cost $4 million, that's a bargain. When you really start, sitting down and breaking things down. And the thing about it is this, the mistake that, if you look around, I'm old enough to remember when there was Eastern, when there was TWA. Even Air Jamaica, I'm old enough to remember all of these different airlines that was once there that's no longer here, but, we're still here. And the thing about it is this, from the government standpoint, our government, my government, we see Cayman Airways as an economic accelerator in the sense that what it does, both directly and indirectly for the country, is almost immeasurable in terms of that peace of mind. We're in a situation where, you look at during COVID, other Caribbean islands needed stuff that we had access for. We're able to, put stuff on our planes and send it down there. To St. Lucia was referring to at that point. We have a situation where, we have our people stranded different places. We could have our own airlift flights to bring people in and out and so forth. So you can't put a price on that. And this is why I say, and again, some things may cost a little bit more, but the security that you get from it, it's something completely different.
Yeah. And it can be life-saving. I mean, we take, for example, the young toddler recently, the Jamaican toddler who was here staying with her mom and had to, had to get immediate treatment. Although she wasn't able to go to the US, we provided the Max 8 at no cost so that that child could get to Jamaica, to the children's hospital there and get life-saving treatment. So, that's just amazing. So let's go back then to some of the summaries in your budget. So we have here surplus for central government, the highest ever, and it surpasses pre-COVID levels. So that was the first quarter of 2022, recorded a surplus of 220 million, which was 18.624 million better than the budget of 202. So just kind of break that bit down for us a little bit.
One of the things, I mean, we expected the first quarter to be strong. I mean, again, because the bulk of financial services came in. But one of the things that the real measure for me that I'm quite happy with is if you look at, there's something in financial term we call jaws. If you think about it like a jaw, is the percentage increase in revenue versus the percentage increase in expenses.
Right.
And what we found in that point is that the percentage increase in revenues, I think, was 10.6%. And the percentage increase in expense was actually 8.6%. So what it basically means is that you're growing, your revenues are still growing faster than your expenses, which is what you want. If it was in the reverse, where if every year your revenues are going up by 5% and expenses are going up by 10%, at some point they're going to overtake each other. And I mean, so, but as long as your growth in revenue is more than your growth in expenses, that's always a good sign. And I really, again, can't thank enough. I mean, and the premier thing alluded to it in his quote was the thousands of people who, in essence, have said, you know what, let me forego that expense, but at the same time, not we call it impact the service delivered, the quality of service delivered to the public. So that was a big thing for us in that regard. And I really, really want to thank the governor and the deputy governor in that regard, because they have, in essence, helped us a lot in terms of getting a lot of the public servants on board in that regard. There's still some areas that we want to zoom in on. There's a big announcement coming up probably sometime later this month. Again, I will leave the relevant minister to make that call, but what I can say is it's something bold. It is something that should have been done a long time ago, similar to what we did our cynical expansion too. So there are some bold decisions that need to be made. And honestly, I am extremely proud of the team that we have. We don't always agree on every single thing, which is the way it's supposed to be. You're supposed to have your arguments, you're supposed to have debates, because politics itself is still about ideas, ideals, and ideology. I mean, everyone comes with their separate one, but once you have those debates, you have those discussions, you have those disagreements, but then you come to consensus. And that is one of the things I actually like about the group, is that, you will have the big disagreements, and that's given in this business. But to the premier's credit, I mean, he does referee a lot of the debates and a lot of disagreements. Very good. I am honestly impressed with his temperament. No.
Yes, he has a lot of patience.
Listen, Sandy.
Yes,
I've
seen it at work a little bit.
Is by nature gets up and do this business without having some level of alpha personality. I mean, you literally become lions to some extent in this business. But the most important thing is to make sure that we use this alpha personality to fight for our people, to get things for our people. You know what I mean? And that's really what it is about. So just as though right now, as we were having this discussion right now, there are people meeting around, not even just here in Cayman, around the world, thinking of ways in which they can take people out earn money out of their pocket. They use terms like, increase share of wallet, increase this, increase that. They're basically just trying to take your money. And the same amount of energy that they put into doing that, we also have to put in a greater energy than they're doing to actually try to protect and preserve what it is that our people is having. One of the things right now that we are pushing to try to create is a capital market in Cayman. I mean, we have a situation right now where our mortgages are still being financed by overnight money. So every time there's an increase in the prime rate, there is an automatic increase here in a lot of people's mortgages. And I mean, a 50% hit like that the last time was actually quite massive. And what people don't realize is this: nobody has on deposit a 20, 25, 30-year deposit in a bank. Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
When those banks are taking your overnight money or your 5-year max fixed term money and lending it for 25, 30 years,
Mm-hmm.
they're creating something called liquidity risk. There's a cost to their capital for doing that. We have
Right.
rules in the banking that limits that. So our goal right now is to actually try to create a capital market, because there are times in the US where even the prime rates have gone up and actually people mortgage rates have gone down, because mortgages in the US are actually backed by the bond market as opposed to the overnight market to some extent. So what we want to do is start separating the two. So if you can sit down now and have bonds issue where you say to somebody, let's issue a 20-year bond, I'm paying you at 2% or 3%. Then the issue is that we now have long-term money that's being invested. So when people talk about, bringing back the pension money here, I will ask the question, bring back the pension money to do what? So, because the banks, if you look at the banks, they're all awash with liquidity. We don't have a cash shortage in Cayman. We don't have a liquidity problem in Cayman. But what we do have a problem with, or a challenge, is long-term fixed money. And that's one of the things that we are trying to develop. And I'm hoping that's one of the things that we can get done in this term. And that's the reason why when we issued the RFP, we were trying to explore all different options. So you take, for example, agriculture. That is something that we're serious about doing. No, you can't lend somebody, if you're in a traditional bank, you lend somebody a money, you expect them to start paying it back very shortly. If you're an agricultural business, by the time you get that land, develop that land and plant the crops, and if your crops to grow, you can't start paying back no money in 2-3 months. It may take you 3-4 years for you to start, So what you need is those little instruments that allow someone to say, you know what, they can develop something, they can go 5 years without paying. That's why things like bullet bonds and those things are created, where you issue it, and then at the end of a period of time, you just make one big payment, that kind of thing. Not to say that we're looking there, but what we're looking at is a combination of different ways to have money so we can finance different projects differently. Because someone that's doing a housing scheme isn't the same as someone who's trying to build agricultural industry. You can't treat them the same way. They have different financing need. One after 12 to 14 months, his houses is maybe ready to go hit the market. A farmer can't say the same thing with his crops in terms of getting land, and of course, then you have all the different issues that can affect it. So it's about a matter of diversifying our balance sheet and what it is that we can actually do to start developing certain industries in Cayman.
Sounds very innovative. Well, we're all looking for solutions to the mortgage issue, because obviously the Feds has said that, listen, it's going to go up at least another 6 times in this year. So I don't think anyone who has a mortgage that's not a fixed rate mortgage is looking forward to that. The results were the highest ever, folks. Again, this is
actually just for the record.
Yes,
there is a bank that we have been speaking to. They're actually looking at even doing a fixed year mortgage, which I think is, like I said, there are some things that we're working on, because one of the main things that we want to do is to get the private sector to do a lot of stuff. I mean, the main thing about it is, and then finding a way to reward them for being good behavior. So there's something that we're working on, and I'm hoping that before the end of next month at a minimum, some of these announcements can start being made.
And I think consumers need to be more proactive as well, because after the second increase, I reached back out to my bank, which is Cayman National. I think everybody knows that. I'm always singing their praises. I said, listen, I see what's coming. What can you guys do for me in terms of a fixed rate? Because I did that during COVID. We actually had, for the 2-year period of COVID, we had a fixed rate. And literally the month before the Fed decided to make the first increase, the bank came back to us and said, what do you want to do? Do you want to remain in a fixed rate? And I thought, no, it hasn't risen in a while. I think we're good to go back to the variable rate. And of course, Murphy's Law, it wasn't a good idea. So, but I've gone
if you
back
follow
to them
the Fed forecast, if you had asked me, I'd tell you to go.
I got to talk to the people who know all about money, right? But I've gone back to them since then. I have said, listen, what are my options? And they do offer 2- and 3-year fixed rate options for your mortgage interest rate, folks. So sometimes you just have to ask. and you'd be surprised what's available. So I'm going to try to lock something in over the next couple of years. But the results for the budget, again, folks, this is the first quarter results for the Cayman Islands government, highest ever for a first quarter, and surpassed the pre-COVID levels, which I think is really quite impressive. Let's look at now revenues, again, being the highest ever and best, better than budget. So again, projections well underway in that regard. For expenses, because of course you can make all the money in the world, but you know, if you're spending more than you're making, then you still got a problem. So for expenses, on the expenses side, we had lower than budget, but still above pre-COVID levels. So Minister, if you could kind of break that down for us a little bit.
Yeah, if you look, I think one of the tables where we actually have broken down the different revenues by the larger groupings. If you look at this general register fees, I mean, in 2019, that was just under 132 million. No, we're basically 151 million. So that's $19 million up. You look at SEMA fees, I mean, that was 86.6 million, just under 87 million. And now we're talking about 139 million. So you're basically looking at roughly 52 million right there in terms of that bucket. So just alone, just financial services alone, the 52 plus the 19, that's about 71. And I basically said it was a $73 million increase between 2019 and 2022. I mean, SEMA fees and general register fees is pretty much the bulk of it. Work permit fees are also up to, by, I think about 5.3 million. If my maths is 5 million or something right there. Property related, I mean, that's up a small amount, but tourism is actually down. And if you look at even import duties, that is actually also slightly up, but I mean, still down. Now, the thing with import duties that's a little bit tricky is that what's also driving that, because of the global inflation and a lot of the stuff that we charge duty on is based on value, then you find out that naturally we will collect more because of inflation. But when you look at the actual items such as alcohol and fuel, which we don't charge on value, but we actually charge on volume, those are actually significantly down compared to where we were in 2019. And that's a result of having, you know, less rental cars on island, less tourists being on island, you know, drinking up and having fun and so forth. So that's the one category that we are concerned, we're looking at, because it speaks to the volume of people here and what it is that people are actually consuming. But I mean, it is still financial services that has been driving it. The private fund fees alone has been one of the biggest additions since I think 2021 when that came online. The private fund fees has really made a big difference. And just to kind of put that in context for your listeners and your viewers, and again, I'm just going my memory a little bit, so just bear with me. I mean, pre-COVID, tourism accommodation tax, the government was like around 36 million thereabouts. And what we made on cruise departure tax was about 11 million. So that right there have been 47 million in direct revenues to the government from, you know, tourism accommodation tax plus the cruise departure tax. You know what I mean? That's 47 million. Right now, that entire revenue that we have basically lost has been replaced by one line on the private fund fees. So again, private fund fees is making over 50 something million dollars a year for us. And that's one of the reasons why, from the government standpoint, on the revenue side, you haven't directly seen the impact as much because of that one line. And if you look at the SEMA fees from 86 million to 138 million, the real growth there has been on the private fund fees. That's what's really been driving it. You know I mean? But then, like I said, when you look at the import duty revenues and you look in terms of fuel, actually, I don't need to guess it. I have my notes right here. 1 second. I'll just put it in context for you. If we look at, here we go. Yeah, here we go. Alcohol and tobacco. I mean, alcoholic beverages, back in the first quarter 2019, we made 5.8 million. For this month, we actually did actual revenue 5.2 million. Gasoline was 4.3 million. Here we just did on a 3.4 million. You know what I mean? So it is, those are the kind of ones that we look at to say, well, you know, those are volume driven business, and you know, it's based on what is, you know, what the volume that we import. You know what I mean? And as a result, you can see they're still below 2019 numbers from that standpoint. So it is, like I said, and the main thing for us too, where we really want to get tourism back up is that there's also the overall economic activity that is missing from the multiplier effect of having that money in the economy circulating around. But then there's also the impact for people in that industry on a personal level, where, and this is what you can't put a price on, in the sense of they're not at 100% productivity yet. And nobody wants to feel, nobody wants to be doing less than they know they're capable of. I mean, we talk about unemployment numbers, but not many people talk about unemployment. How many people are doing jobs in which they're far more qualified to do, they know they're capable of doing more, and they just want that opportunity. Those are the kind of things you can't put a price on. You know what I mean? And so the numbers are one thing, but we still have thousands of people in our islands, in our family, who waking up every day and not feeling that 100% of productivity of what it is that they're capable of. And that, more than anything, is what eats away. And that's why the Premier and my other colleagues you hear talk about closing the dignity gap. Because at the end of the day, I mean, I know people, they get invited out to their friends on for a happy hour. They don't go simply because they can't afford to buy a round. I mean, you can't put a price on that. For people staying home, and of course they're probably binge watching on Netflix, and of course that also leads to other health issues too. So that's the part of the people, part of the equation that this government is concerned about, that we need to tighten up, and that's one of the reasons why we want to do more things to bring people together, but also people to feel their value.
Absolutely,
Everybody,
quality of life, really.
Every single person. Last week or the week before, I mean, we had a presentation from Inclusion Cayman. I mean, that group has been doing a wonderful job in terms of, how do we get more of, our people who are disabled for different reasons as part of society. We offer too long leave a large part of our community and their extended families out of many of the decision-making process or consideration process. And those are the kind of things that we need to fix, because at the end of the day, this is still about the people. This is the people's business. And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah. Wonderful. So before we wrap up with the Minister and Deputy Premier, let's just talk a little bit about, we're talking about employment. So let's just talk a little bit about what's happening on the labor front. I think we're still waiting on some reports and figures coming out of the ESO, their, census that was conducted last year. But what's the labor market looking like, and what do you see this government being able to do to improve opportunities for Caymanians?
One of the things, and I'm kind of glad you asked that question to some extent, because one of the things you hear a lot of stories about, people can't get work permits, people can't get this, people can't get that, and us that call fat. You look at the actual work permit revenues, it doesn't show that picture. What is actually happening more now is more scrutiny by the different boards, by the different entities that are looking in terms of work permits. And what you also have, which is on the increase, is more people actually using a complaints hotline in terms of being denied opportunity. I mean, that one has actually gone up, I think, massively increased in terms of the last numbers that we looked at, where people are actually complaining more. I wouldn't say complaining more, but people are bringing more things to our attention that has to be considered. One of the things that we are working on is an accreditation program, in the sense that we recognize that mistakes have been made in the past. One of the things that I would say to my colleagues when they come to me and say to me, DP, so-and-so is complaining about getting a work permit. First thing I'd ask them if they've ever been fined by the work department. Ask if they've been fined by government, because those are things that we don't publish. So you can't expect to get your hand caught in a cookie jar for, breaking parts of the rules and the regulations, and then expect I'm just going to forget about that. You tried it, it didn't work, you paid your fine, but I must forget the bad behavior. No. So I will always say to them, ask if they are on my IRIS register. Because if you're on IRIS register, it means then that we're going to put more scrutiny on your application.
And rightfully so.
Yeah. So one of the things that we are looking at now is to say, you know what? We recognize a lot of stuff in the past. What has happened is happened. There's nothing you can do to change that. We're bringing an accreditation system. Hopefully we finish before the end of next month, where we can say, well, this is what we consider to be a good employer.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that we're working on right now is actually automating the entire work process, because we process around 5,700 decisions a month. But what people don't see from that is that most applications aren't one go. Sometimes it takes 2, 3, 4 times for them to get it right. Either they left that off, they left out an address, they left out something. And it's more work for my team to be going back and chasing them back up to Seneca. What we don't want to do is just outright turn down a permit. So I have to go back now and say, can you go back and fix that? And those things take time. So
Right.
one of the things that we're looking at now is actually automate the entire work permit system, where you can't upload everything. You can't upload the documents until everything has been in place. Because if not, the system just won't allow you to complete it.
Mm-hmm.
And what we're open for now is to have the metrics built in, where if you're a good employee, you check all of these different boxes, and we have different algorithms running the back. We can say, you know what, based on this, there's no complaints here, this is that, and so forth. And as we're trying to get everything to the job portal, you can literally get an automated response as to whether this is approved, whether it is pending, or deferred or whatever. And then for the employers now who the system is spit out an exception, those are the ones that human will go look at. So someone putting something for a doctor, somebody want to come down and be a neurosurgeon. I mean, something like that really don't need to go to the board. I mean, once they have the regular qualifications, the relevant government board has approved them. From that standpoint, you shouldn't be waiting on a decision for a neurosurgeon. You know what I mean? They aren't Caymanians brain surgeon walking around here, looking for something. So we can, based on the database, and that's why it's important for us to say to as much people who are looking jobs, please register. Because we need information in order to make informed decisions, because the majority of these businesses are still owned by Caymanian people, are owned by our friends, are owned by our families. And if they can't service their business, they can't service their clients, then we're also impacting other Caymanians also. So it is a balancing act to some extent. So I am aware of the complaints, but as I say to everybody, look at the 2019 numbers, look at the 2022 numbers, the results speak for themselves. But again, it is because there's more scrutiny going on now in terms of different applications and so forth. That's kind of one of the things I just want to touch on there too, is that even right now, one of the other issues that we're wrestling with now is, I don't use the word sham marriages or marriage of convenience, because every marriage is a marriage of convenience to some extent. But so those are some of the stuff that we're actually looking at tackling now.
I think the distinction is some are only a marriage of convenience, and there's no real love
all
there.
marriages are convenient, But it is one of the things that we're looking at. So there are some changes that we are looking at on the legislative side to deal with some of these immigration issues. We're also looking at putting together a committee now to review the actual point system and make sure that those point systems reflect the value that we want within our community in terms of how people integrate, as opposed to what it is right now. Because there are a lot of qualified people that can be here. And if there's one thing that COVID has shown us, jobs that we looked at as being that don't pay as much are the valuable jobs that we needed during COVID. And as such, we should also have pathways for those people to also be able to become part of the Caymanian community, part of the Caymanian society, and part of the Caymanian fabric. As opposed to just, if you're rich and you live in a certain place and you have this, you automatically get it. So there are a lot of different stuff that we need to make sure that it actually reflects the values that we as a people, we as a community want to actually look at.
Very interesting. So in terms of the automation for the work permits, based on what you've said, does that mean then that you would actually be filling out your form completely online for
everything online, paperless?
Paperless, yeah. Wow. Yeah, that would be so much more efficient.
And the same thing too. I'll say it now, because we also want something similar for CBC too, where we want, as part of the e-government initiative, you're a Caymanian, you walk off the plane, you grab your bags and go. I mean, first of all, you're a Caymanian, clearing immigration. Like, who's going to deny you entering your own country? You know what I mean? So, of course, we just need to make sure that we have steps to say that you're truly Cayman and everything else, where you swipe and go or something. But what we want is an app where you can, because most people don't have a problem paying duty. What people have a problem is lining up, coming home, that long line where they want 2 people, and they're like, nah, I ain't doing this.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean? So what we want to do is, while you're sitting in the Miami International Airport or wherever you are, you can go on and fill out your electoral declaration, pay your duties right there.
And receipts.
You know what I mean?
From your phone.
Yeah,
That'd be
and you
amazing.
scan right through. So,
Yeah.
you walk into 10 bags and you don't have anything. So
Yeah.
those are the kind of stuff that we want to just get people moving through the airport. The director, Clifford, and his team has done a very good job in the sense of being, a risk-based type approach. Because we're wasting too much resources on mundane things. You know what I mean? Where we need to really take a more risk-based approach, because not every time as the airport grow, have to grow the staff. I mean, we're growing government to some extent, and the number of people in the public service, I mean, far more. I prefer to keep a number steady, and then what we save, we look at find ways of, giving back something. And that will go much further in the long run, as opposed to just keep growing the public service as is.
No, I mean, this concept of automation, I must tell you, it shouldn't be anything new, because we've lived in an automated era. But I think that COVID has really forced us to rethink a lot of things. I just came back myself, from Miami, and I'm looking at, when you walk through a line in Walmart, now you can do self-checkout. And I'm like, hey, I'm paying them for me to do their cashiering, but I don't mind, because it's a quicker option than standing in a traditional line and having someone do that for me. Sam's Club has a scan and go option. So as I'm picking up my items, I scan them in real time with their app. And when I'm done, I pay for it, and I literally just walk out.
The only difference is
there's a security checkpoint, so they do random checks.
The only difference is, I prefer to see my CBC team focusing more on keeping the legal stuff out of the island, the drugs, the guns, and so forth, as opposed to finding what someone spent at Walmart. I mean, no offense, but what we collect at the airport is, again, speaking from memory, I think it's about $970,000 a year is what we collect in duties from the airport. But it is a point of entry, and it is not the revenue that is really we're trying to protect. It is more the smuggling that can happen at a point of entry.
Yeah.
And I would prefer to see more resources being spent on that. I mean, the same approach that we took, even as saying, go back to the stipend. Are we going to sit down now and spend limited resources chasing for that 2%, 5%, or whatever number it may be? Because when you factor it in, the thousands of what you would spend in terms of cost of personnel to chase that, and if you do find it, then you gotta go through the long criminal court and all. It wasn't really worth it. We prefer our energy be directed someplace else. As the same thing over the airport is that, I would prefer to see more energy, more resources directed towards illegal behaviors where you can actually sit down, observe, have that opportunity to. I mean, you got the UK. You literally grab your bag and walk right through the UK. I mean, they're doing, again, a risk-based type assessment, and they have bigger threats than we have. But yeah, you can do that in their airport. And then if you look at where most of the people are coming from here, is that they're also coming from very secure locations too. The US airport, I mean, granted, you will have the occasional somebody get through with something, but generally they're coming from also other secure areas too. So it is one of those situations. But I mean, overall, like I said, we have a good team.
From a CBC and border control perspective, one of the sort of criticisms that I've heard is that one of the areas of risk, which often goes somewhat undetected or nothing happens, it's actually the people of financial means trying to take advantage of the system who, are millionaires, but they're still trying to smuggle goods in. They want to bring in expensive cars or whatever and not pay the respective duty on those items. Whereas you said, a lot of energy can be spent nickel and diming with someone who just went to Walmart for the weekend or Target or whatever. Some people who are in that business have said to me, sometimes they've highlighted to customs or CBC that you need to pay very, very close attention to this particular individual. And, they have a lunch with someone and those concerns disappear. So
I can say this much, not on this ministry, not on the team that we have there. What I can say, and again, I've met with those guys and being able now to have conversations with them that other people wouldn't have. There are also other sides to the story that sometimes is not out there in the public domain. And this is Cayman. You always will have the stuff. But what I can say is that, I mean, since we have been here, I've not seen it. You know what I mean? I'm not saying. I mean, all I can say is I've not seen it, and I've not seen anything inside the process that would make me question as if though. I mean, yes, you'll hear the stories of things happening, but what I can say is if there's anything, the complaint I've gotten is that customs actually charge too much because once they reach that blue book, the blue book is the blue book, and sometimes you can get a bargain because even right now, I'm just kind of give an idea. If you buy something online and you get a certain discount, even on your sale, they will only discount it no more than 20%, even though you may have gotten it at a bargain. So they still force you to almost pay the same market price less 20%. I mean, and that is something that is there that people have come to me and complain about. I can tell you, Shauna buys stuff online, and she likes ASOS. They always having good sales, and I can tell you for every single thing she buys from ASOS, the duty that we pay has nothing to do with the actual price that she pays that she get a bargain. But I've kind of got used to it to the point that you know what, I just declare that the full amount. I don't even put it into where the discount is or whatever the price is because I know they're going to push back on it. But again, what we want to do is get all of that system automated, because it's once we can do that, it become much more efficient. And if we can then get as much as we can automated, again, we can now have the team or the resources being focused on the really legal activity. Because I can tell you, what keep me awake at night is not somebody coming through buying stuff at Walmart and they're clearing it. Is how many guns do we have inside here illegally, and different stuff. So
all
that
the legal
really
contraband.
the one thing I must say more than anything, Sandy, is that every single Caribbean island has sand, sea, and sun. The one thing that Cayman has more than anything is an overall safety and secure environment.
Yes.
And it's important that we never, ever lose that. Because once we lose that, then we're going to lose everything else with it. And that's why it's very important for the police and everyone to have that level of, and the community to have that level of cooperation with the police. Because at the end of the day, the police is still an after response unit. They show up after something has happened, and it is therefore important then for the community to give them the relevant information in terms of things that has happened, because we can't afford to ever reach a point where we become too desensitized to the criminal stuff and what is going on within our country, because the long-term effect is going to be far too detrimental for us.
Well, Minister, we can't have you in the program at this point in time and not ask you to address the ongoing concern in the community of the increasing number of Cuban nationals, Cuban migrants that are coming in our shores. So, I mean, I think we're headed for a record for 2022. Someone said we're going to be reopening Tent City to be able to accommodate all these numbers. You're running out of temporary accommodation space. What's the game plan? What is the government?
Well, I can tell you, I'm glad you actually mentioned, because I was actually going to mention it also. One of the things that we have, and you will see it in the post-cabinet summary that will be coming out, I think probably on Wednesday, because cabinet will meet on Wednesday for cabinet, is we have installed a new chairman for the Refugee Protection Appeals Tribunal, RPAT, and we have also added OC on. So we have cabinet has approved Langston Sibbles to be the next chair for RPAT and add OC on as a member. One of the things that we want to do is actually, because there is still an international best practice, a human rights approach that has to be taken for everyone who asks for asylum. And then the main thing then is to have the committee meet and review those very quickly. So we have actually put together, we have had several meetings already, Wesley Howell, Clifford, the DG too, and everyone the likes, where we have started addressing this issue. One of the main things is to actually start processing the applications much quicker. If you look at the, I think there was an article in the Washington Post late last month. It could have been early this month too. No, late last month. Where the amount of, there's actually a record number of Cubans now at the U.S.-Mexico border.
Yes.
And I mean, we are thinking 1 month alone, they apprehended like 39,000 or something like that. It was definitely up there. and they're looking at about maybe 150 to maybe 200,000 this year. They're estimating from Cubans trying to go to the U.S. via Mexico.
Yes.
So of course Cayman becomes, and of course there's also human smuggling and everything else involved. I can tell you right now, and again, I'll just say, some of the people that I see coming off, I'm like, there's no way those people are on no boat for no days.
Yep.
Someone to drop them off someplace. I mean,
Yes.
that's just my personal opinion, but I can't back it up with facts. You know what I mean? But I'm like, no, you didn't be not see for no number of days. So there are a lot of different issues, and what you do recognize is that Cuba is still very heavily dependent on Russia for assistance. And what is going on now in terms of Ukraine and Russia and everything else, and resources being diverted, and Russia being cut off from the international community, the normal assistance that they could even provide to the Cuban people and the Cuban economy, a lot of the situation now is economic in nature. And I really genuinely feel it for many of the people, because listen, there are some things that we can't imagine, and I have seen people where when a child is hungry and they can't make ends meet, for someone to put to sea in some of the boats that they have put to, where I'm surprised some of these boats reach that far, but you have to ask yourself how desperate or how rough things have to be for someone to say, I'm going to take my life, I'm going to take a chance on that little raft to really go and try to make a better life for my family. You know what I mean? So I really do feel for them in that regard. And regardless of what people think, my daddy went to sea, and he never came back with any stories of being treated in any funny way. Because there was a time where opportunities were limited in Cayman, and our people had to leave to go make better life. Granted, we left on legal means, we left on opportunities that were available to us, and I'm only happy that at least we are in a position to repay some of the kindness that was given to our ancestors when they ventured out to different places. So I can say genuinely, one of the things that we want to do is treat every situation on a case by case basis. We do recognize, yes, it is economic in nature, and it is tough. I mean, it is tough. I mean, it's not pretty right now. I mean, I've seen some of the stories, I've heard some of the stories. It's not pretty. And when you have families that you need to take care of, and you have babies crying and going to bed hungry. I mean, as a parent, I'm sorry, but as a parent, I'm not speaking as a Cayman, I'm not speaking as a Cuban, I'm speaking as a parent. That is something that no parent ever wants. So I genuinely feel it for them. I honestly do. And like I said, whatever it is that we can do to assist, I'm glad we are in a position to assist. It can't come at the expense of our own people. But those are the kind of little things that, as simple as you see, that's how you get your blessings sometimes. I mean, I look at our numbers, and I can say that the Cayman Islands is truly a blessed place. I mean, we have defied all situations to be where we are right now. You know what I mean? So I'm happy that at least we're in a position where if someone even shows up on our shores, we can still at least offer them a meal. Some countries can't do that.
Do we have any idea of what percentage of the individuals that come here actually are applying for asylum?
Well, from what I can't say break it by percentage, but I mean, a lot of them pretty much understand the system where they do recognize that, once you cry asylum, I mean, we still have international obligations. Everyone knows where Cuba stands on the international level, where the US and everyone else is concerned too. So there are protocols. I mean, we are part of international community, whether we like it or not. And as such, it requires us to basically respond in a certain way, where you just can't say, no, you look this way, you send them back. You still have to go through the process. I mean, it's an unfortunate part, but it is something that still needs to be done. Yes, it may be a little bit long sometime, but at the end of the day, what I mean, and I can tell you the vast majority of the people I've seen are, and the cases that I've seen thus far, are just people who are in genuine need, more economic than political than anything else. You know what I mean? But it is rough.
So the solution then that we're looking at is to expedite the processing of
and so we can return them home, because we do have an MOU with Cuba, where it also sets out, I mean, pretty much certain steps that we also have to take too, and certain actions that are required on our side.
Right. And it's amazing, Minister, because we get a lot of here at CMR. I don't know why they reach out to us. I guess they've heard we have the inside source all the way in Cuba. We get a lot of people messaging us. I mean, sometimes it's almost daily when they believe their loved ones might have reached their shores, just trying to confirm and get information because they're so worried about them. And we also have people saying, how can I come to the Cayman Islands and work from all places? I mean, it's just amazing sometimes where we get messages from. And we try to explain to them that there is a legal pathway to be able to come into the Cayman Islands, but you actually have to find an employer that has genuine employment opportunities, first of all. And number two, is unable to fill those employment opportunities with a Caymanian. And so then at that point, there becomes a possibility of, a foreign national being able to come in. One Cuban guy, he's actually a doctor in Cuba and he's looking to get out. And, he was telling me some information about, there's a new, agreement with Cuba where, Cubans could come here on a boat. And I'm like, no, we weren't returning them. And I said, one of the things I think this government clearly needs to do is send out very clear messaging, do some PSAs and Spanish if you need to.
Yeah, we have
is reaching the people,
Remember the Cuban social media network is not the same as ours too. I mean, the internet connectivity and everything is really not the same. And remember, you're still speaking to a country where a lot of the information is still controlled by the government. So there is, like I said, we do recognize it. I mean, it's a Gigi in the back there that just popped in. Yeah, sorry. I saw your door open. I thought that was Gigi. But no, there is still, like I said, a process to be followed. And while people may not like it and people not like how long the process is, at the end of the day, we still have certain obligations that we have to undertake. And quite simply, to some extent, following the process is really the right thing to do. We may not like it, but it is the right thing to do. We're still dealing with human beings, and it's very easy to where we can just say the Cubans and lump everybody into one. But just as though we as Caymanians don't want to be lumped into anybody. This is still people. I mean, we have a way of, I was watching something several months back, and you look at, they were talking about the way in which the military do certain things. They don't say like a terrorist, or the ones like this one or this group, it's a terrorist or an insurgent. You use different stuff to take off the fact that you're still dealing with people. And until you have seen these people and look in their eyes and see challenges and the different stuff, then at that point, you can understand why many Caymanians, when they do see them, actually do the right thing. Well, I wouldn't say the right thing, but actually help them, whether it be to feed them, offer them food, clothes, or whatever. You then understand why, because once you see it and you can genuinely see that need in their face, it is very hard to unsee that. You know what I mean? And so it's easy when people can just know that they're arriving and saying one thing. But you go down to one of those places, you meet them, you see them, you carry a complete different view. And like you say, these are people, mothers, they're people, fathers, they're people, sons, they're people, daughters. You know what I mean? And like with anyone else, we have a very rich maritime heritage. I remember one of the first things when we had a situation, I think, with one of those boats were coming in and there was a crew member on board with COVID. And I remember speaking to Premier about it, and recognizing the COVID situation, and he and I sat there and I said, DP, what are your thoughts? I said, Premier, my daddy worked on a boat. That's somebody else's daddy. We have a rich maritime heritage of our own mothers he had founded up on the seas, and he says, thanks, because that's exactly where I'm leaning into. We're going to tell them, to come and get the medical help that they need. The night before, we didn't know much about COVID. Now we know a little bit more about it than everything else, but it literally became a no-brainer for us. If there are people to be helped, it is in the Caymanian DNA to help people. That is who we are. That is part of what has made us unique. We're welcoming and we help people. We give people sometimes what we don't have.
Right.
That's who we are.
Very true. I think in tough times, people start to probably change from that position that we've always shared of helping others. But hopefully, we'll maintain that to some extent. Minister, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join our viewers and our listeners to the program. We really appreciate it. I know that we covered a lot of ground this morning. So again, thank you for joining us, and hopefully, you won't be a stranger.
Well, Sandra, seeing that this mango season.
Yeah.
I don't know. You always remember. You always remember me.
Oh, yes.
And you're also a constituent too. You know what I mean? Don't forget you're in Bodentown West. Sorry, Bodentown West. Always do that just every now and then. But no, I think it's important, and I need to start finding more time myself too. I mean, I have two full ministries. I mean, the Ministry of Finance and Economic Development, and Ministry of Border Control and Labor. I mean, they are literally full time. And I'm being blessed with two great chief officers, Wesley Howell and Ken Jefferson. I really couldn't ask for better chief officers than those two decent people. I mean, I really want to thank their family for the amount of times I've interrupted them on weekends and late at night, just to get stuff done. I mean, I see the team here. I mean, what it is that they do. It's one thing when you come inside, you stay outside. The next thing when you come inside the belly of the beast. And there are things that you appreciate more. I mean, you said even the governor himself. I mean, barring the difference we had on that, little domestic partnership bill or whatever, decent professional person to work with, and genuinely mean well to Cayman. And I really hope we can find a way to even extend his stay next year. The commissioner, passionate. I mean, really top class, you know what I mean? And even Franz, I mean, the deputy governor and I see we've been taking some hits on social media, recently, but I can tell you, a genuine patriot, and everything that the elected government has pretty much asked him for, he has gone above and beyond to help. And at the end of the day, these are still our own Caymanian people. I've yet to meet anyone that I can honestly say do not have the best interests at heart. We may have disagreements in terms of things to be done, but at the end of the day, our political process requires that if there's a direction you want the country to go in, you put your $1,000 up and you go get your mandate. You know what I mean? It's just that simple. I mean, that's just the system that we have. But I mean, overall, I'm very pleased with the team that we have put together. I mean, we do have our arguments, we do have our disagreements, we do have our very strong differences of opinion, but at the end of the day, we're all Caymanian. And the most important thing for us as a group, which I've seen thus far, is if we have a disagreement on one issue, we don't take that disagreement to another issue. We leave it there. You know what I mean? Yes. Not because last week, you came and asked me for something. You know what I mean? I can tell you, as a Minister of Finance, I mean, it's a role that I take very serious. And also as a Minister of Labor, is a role I take very serious. But the finances of the country is one of the most important things, because, as I say to my colleagues, don't care what it is that you want to do. Don't care how much it is you care about people, it still takes cash to care. And if we don't have the resources to do what is necessary to help our people, then that's a different story. Right. So it's fine right now, the first quarter, we know always does well. But we know that the other 9 months now is actually going to be quite lean, where most of the months our expenses are going to exceed our revenues. So the main thing now is to manage what it is that we have, watch our cash very closely. We're still trying to keep our debt down and the interest payments down. I don't see why we should be paying, $2-3 million in interest if we can be using that $2-3 million to help Cayman families. So there are a lot of different decisions that we have to make, but at the same time, maintain a climate where people are very happy to do business, And I want to leave your listeners with this. Sandy, and maybe if you find time one day, you can actually play it for people. But it was an interview that Michael Manley did in 1977. I mean, this is the height of the Cold War. He was, I think, in the United Nations in New York. He went to just came out of the 76 election. He had more seats. 72 was a landslide. In 76, he got more seats. He was on cloud nine. And if you follow politics, you'll see a man that was waxing lyrical. I mean, the man could just there.
Mm-hmm.
But then there was an interview that he did a year after he left office and a year before he died.
Mm-hmm.
And that interview, more than anything, so you have to watch those two in context between what he was saying in the 77 and what he was saying in the early 90s. And
Mm-hmm.
one of the questions along the line that the interviewer had asked him was, how could he got everything so right in theory?
Mm-hmm.
Everything went so sideways. And he said he learned 3 lessons. One, he used language that frightened the middle class, that resulted in one of the biggest brain drains Jamaica ever had.
Mm-hmm.
2, he used language to frighten investors and business people. We needed them to create jobs. And then 3, he overestimated the political awareness of the Jamaican people in that he thought they could understand what it was he's trying to do. And that is why everything or most things that this government do, you'll see we try to put it in the public domain because we want people to see the bigger picture of what it is that we're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
Our goal right here is to remember first and foremost that, the power in the people is greater than the people in power.
Mm-hmm.
This is still a people-driven government. And it's important that the people recognize that the highest political office in this country is not premier. It is actually the voter. They're the ones that hire, they're the ones that fire. And any politician who don't recognize that or understand that is not going to do very well in this business. This is still about the people. And for us, when people say, well, the government should do this, the government should do that, I always say, well, the government is the people. Why should the people do this? Why should the people do that? Our job is to make sure that we empower the people. We create the different tools, we'll facilitate what we need to facilitate. So for the people to do it. I mean, right now the premier has assembled a housing committee, which he's chairing.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I will leave him to make his announcement. I don't want to take his thunder from that regard. It was, his initiative. But rather than the government going out and building a ton of houses, it's still about finding a way to partner the private sector.
Right.
Put what it is that we can put into place, because at the end of the day, the private sector can still build far more houses than we can.
Absolutely.
I mean, if we are having these housing challenges right now and tourism is not back to full capacity, can you imagine when we bring on another 1,000, 2,000 more workers within the tourism industry when it gets back to capacity? I mean, again, where are you going to put those people? And then on top of that, too, you're talking about as soon as tourism come back, rooms that we have right now that's in the domestic rental market, more than likely is going to move to the Airbnb market, which again is going to make the problem again much bigger. So is this unique to Cayman? No. But what it is that we need to do is to find ways in which we can encourage people. So there are some things that we're working on, but again, I will wait to the premier to make the announcement in that regard so you can put out the collective approach that we're taking to actually deal with it. But what I can say is that these are the kind of things that keep us awake at night. I can tell you most of our phone call happen 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night. Minister Brian being one of the biggest culprits. This one I have no concept of time. He call like 11:30.
Yeah.
And then starting a conversation kind of like, or Jay is the worst one in the morning, 6 something in the morning. Then the morning I wake up, I saw my phone going silent when I'm sleeping. I wake up, I missed call from Minister Turner 6 something in the morning. I'm like, you look at the last scene online, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
And it's like 6 o'clock. I'm like, did these people even sleep?
Yeah.
None of them want to say anything too, because I'm just as guilty too. But this is what it is, and this is the only place that we have. So it's important for us to make sure it's the best place that we do have. So I will try my best to at least come on at least once every couple of months or something. Definitely whenever there's something I think that's worth announcing and to directly put it out there for the people. But there's some things that we're working on right now too, in terms of some type of insurance overall for the country too, because we do recognize that. Last year we got hit with Tropical Storm Grace, and the response in terms of assisting some of the homes didn't go as quickly and as smooth as we would have liked it. Yes, it's a lesson learned for us, but we still recognize that there are some homes out there. Hurricane season is coming up that still have not been repaired from the last season, so we are trying to expedite that right now. But again, seeing the process where it is, because you have to go through, because there are some people who, because government is paying for it, the invoice got jacked up. Some of these construction people, the prices that they quoted, and the minute the government became involved, things got added on, and it's just really, really sad, you know. So we've got to find a way in which to really smooth that entire process out too, to make it much easier too, you know what I mean. But at the same time, being accountable, because it is the people's money, you know, and you'll always have people out there who are going to try to take advantage of the system.
Yes.
You know, so,
all right, Minister. Wow, we covered a lot of ground today. I want to
almost an hour and a half.
I know. I want to thank you definitely for coming on the program. And folks, again, we know that the Deputy Premier and Minister of Finance and Border Control and Labor is going to be a fixture on the program. So get ready in the future episodes to be able to get your questions answered directly from him. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this segment today. Minister, thank you again.
All right, Sandy, have a good morning now.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Cold Hard Truth on Bobo 89.1 FM. Cayman's #1 talk show is live weekdays from 7:30 a.m. Never miss an episode again. Watch anytime on CMR's Facebook and YouTube channels for the latest show episodes. Don't forget to follow us online on our social media channels and visit CaymanMarlRoad.com for all the latest news and community happenings.